Stand by. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're in YouTube and you want to join the conversation, you can click on the Zoom link. And in the Zoom link, you can click on the Mukana link, and then you can actually be part of asking questions in the chat. If you are here and you see this this fine panel and you think that as you listen to the show, you think that you could do better, or you could contribute, or you could add something, you probably could. And we'd love to have you here. So we always invite everybody, and we'd always love to see everybody here. We always get a couple new faces each week that kind of add to our knowledge, centuries of wisdom here in one place. So if you'd like to do that, just get here early, 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We open the doors at 6, so you can actually come in. I can't promise anything before 6:40. We we talk about all kinds of things. At 6:40, we do mic checks. Once we start doing the mic checks, so we're not going to add anybody else to the panel for the day. At 7 o'clock, we start doing question and answer, or starting to answer questions, or at least discuss questions. I can't promise that we can answer all the questions, but I can promise that we will consider them and discuss them and try to do the best we can. That starts at 7. We really depend on your questions. This show is driven by questions, probably more so than any other show that I've ever seen. It's really just questions. So first hour is all general questions. Second hour is usually something specific. Today, we're at the end of this year, we're really thinking about what we're doing next year. We've decided that we're probably going to do this for a while. We've been doing it for a while now, and we can commit to a year of another year of work. So what do we want to do? So today we're going to talk a little bit about what kind of artists and also artist support that we want to talk about on Thursdays. So what kind of artists or talent or creators do we want to bring in to discuss stuff, as well as we also use Thursdays to talk about how those artists can be more successful online, technologies around that. So that's kind of the Thursday discussion here for the second hour. If you have a question or comment for the second hour, make sure to use the tag. So in Mukana, you ask the question and you'll have the option to tag it for second hour. That way we know that it's there. A lot of times what we're doing in the first hour is we're looking over and seeing how many things are tagged in the second hour to make a decision about whether we let the general questions run over, or whether we start on time. So that's kind of where we're at there. And I think we can go ahead with start with those questions. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, Brian Bevito of Detroit, Michigan is in with the first one. Alex, the other day you mentioned implementing more Streamyard into your 2021 workflow. Can you elaborate more on the topic, please?
The primary thing that we're looking at for Streamyard is related to LinkedIn Live. So it's just an easy way to publish to LinkedIn Live. I don't know how much more we'll do with it but that's usually how it starts. You start doing something and then you start doing more. But the fact that it supports LinkedIn Live, we're looking at a couple different things there. I'd like to. I'm a little behind, but I'm starting sometime in January. We're basically going to start publishing this event to many platforms, and it's mostly for us to start getting data on those platforms. So what do people do? How many people are watching on LinkedIn Live versus Facebook versus YouTube versus Twitter, and just get a sense of what people are where it's mostly for us as a virtual event and streaming people using our own system to do a little test on seeing where those are, and we'll of course give you guys more of the data back as well. We're also going to make Mukana a lot more visible. So it'll be a lot easier for people to, even if they don't want to interact with it, just listen. So there'll be some links that we promote that allow people to just listen to the show if they want to. And we're going to be publishing a podcast soon, hopefully as early as next week. So that's why we're kind of tightening and letting everybody know that they need to get good mics and make sure that they, or at least have a mic, if they're going to join the panel, because we're really taking into account people listening on as a podcast. And so we want to kind of have it at high quality podcast level as far as audio goes. So that's kind of, where we're going with that. But to get back to StreamYard, it's really specific to being able to publish to LinkedIn Live. So that's where we're going with that. Next question.
And Victor Cajallo in the panel from Brookings, South Dakota says, what are the feelings about using a VPN service like Express VPN for daily use at home?
Go ahead, TJ.
I have a couple different VPNs that I use on occasion. I'm not doing anything nefarious with it. Just trying to hide banking info or something like that. If you're looking to use it for a whole house, look up ones that are compatible with your router. Some of your routers can tie into the VPN so that everything goes through that if you're looking to do that kind of thing. Make sure you pay for it. If you are not paying for it, they are doing something where they're getting money somehow, and they're probably monitoring your traffic somehow if you're not paying for it.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
I use something called OpenDNS instead of a VPN service at home, specifically because I also have Airbnb guests who often stay when I'm away. And at least what it allows me to do is block and control what they have access to on the internet, making sure that no one's using my home account for anything nefarious on that node. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of research. I'm probably going to put in a lot of open DNS, mostly for my kids. So that's definitely my plan there. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, decades ago, I was on a early computing service called CB Simulator, and I watched that people who came on under handles, and handles were a CB kind of thing that they virtualized into that, were generally less thoughtful, meaner, and used better language. So I said, from now on, I'm going to just go on and do things under my own name. That was the beginning of me understanding that it all starts with what you put out. That said, I do have, I think I use IPVanish or something like that. And whenever I'm in a circumstance where I believe it's important for me to up my security, I will do that. But generally, I think that first rule is the most important one for me. I just don't put anything out the door that I don't stand behind as my personal opinion.
You go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, specifically, I have Express VPN. I pay for it. I'm looking to use it in order to watch some TV shows in Spain and the UK specifically. That's kind of the use case that I want to use it for.
My use case, and I use Vanish VPN. My use case is that I pay for the NFL ticket so I can watch the Steelers. I live in San Francisco, and my team is in Pittsburgh, and there's a lot of blackout days, and so I pay for it. But I pay for it in Delhi. So because Delhi doesn't have, in addition to paying for it, the NFL still doesn't let me watch all the live shows. Like, it's the kind of the dumbest, pay thing. And I've stopped paying for it because the Steelers are now doing well and they show most of them here. But so the result is to do exactly what you're doing, Victor, is that I'm using Vanish VPN to log into Delhi to access my paid service in Delhi. So I feel like I feel righteous about it because it's not like I'm taking something for free. I just am doing it from a different city.
And I'm assuming that it's just okay to just turn it off when you're not using it for that.
I only use
it to keep it on, right?
I only use it when I'm watching those. I'm only using it when I watch those. And I've used it a lot. We had a VPN that was centered in Washington, D.C., and I used it a lot to move my TV.YouTube around, so that I could watch East Coast things. So that's another thing you can do. But yeah, the thing to know generally about VPNs is that if you're doing something like that, it's not really that interesting. But if you're doing anything more interesting than finding TV shows, just know that they're not nearly what they're cracked up to be. So don't think that you're that secure. Go ahead, Peter, and then TJ.
Yeah, I was about to echo what you said. Be careful what you're using it for, because so I use ExpressVPN, Victor, for exactly what you're using it for, but for watching some shows I've gotten addicted to that are off of CBC in Canada. So I do that. It hammers my home link, which is normally symmetrical gigabit. It drops down to 300 megabits.
Yep.
I mean, that's a terrible thing to happen. I know it's a real first world problem. but for work, I mean, we are required to use a VPN for work. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right. But it is a commercial grade VPN,
right,
that does a bunch of stuff, and you have to be,
Yep.
So I don't run it normally except on my work machine, which is over here.
Yep. TJ and then Richard, pretty quick. We're going to move on.
Just like Peter, I travel to Canada on occasion to be able to catch a few TV shows, and just some of the TV services will block certain VPN output nodes. They kind of know the IP addresses, so you might have to check around for a couple different ones.
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of VPNs do log your activity regardless of what they say they're doing. I mean, even OpenDNS is technically logging you as well. So, but I also often have to use either Express or TunnelBear to access stuff that I am paying for, but because of traveling, I might not be able to access where I currently am. So,
absolutely. By the way, this is only tangentially connected. I have realized that Netflix Party is now something else. They still use the same URL, but it allows you to watch, all of us to watch a Netflix show together, which I wasn't that interested in because there wasn't a Netflix show I wanted to do that with. But it now works with Disney Plus, Hulu, and HBO Max from the web thing. We will be testing it this weekend. So my recommendation is to go up. What you have to do is go up to Netflix Party, and the first thing you have to do is log in to the web version of your Disney Plus or your whatever. You will not, if you did it with Apple TV, you won't have a login. So you put your email in, and then you say, I lost my password, and then it'll let you create a password. And now you'll have your Disney Plus account or whatever there. And then what you can do then is, if I start a movie and then I use Netflix Party, you need to install the extension into Chrome. You can watch the movie with the playhead at the same place that I'm at, as the host. And if I stop it, I can do that as well. What would be really cool, I think, is to have all of us do what we're doing with Keynotes, where we watch a movie. We can even stop the movie if we want to talk about something. And we all have a roundtable discussion inside of Zoom. So inside of the Zoom with Mukana and everything else, we're all talking about a movie. This isn't for us to all watch a movie together. This is all for us to analyze a movie together. And so it's been something that I've wanted to do for a while. And I think that we're very close now. That I just didn't have any Netflix things I really wanted to watch with the group, but now we can do Star Wars and Marvel and all kinds of other fun stuff. So, and what I want to do is I want to test it first on some movies that are not super high profile, and then I want to bring friends in that actually worked on the movies to talk about them while we're going, within older movies. But I think it could be a lot of fun. Go ahead, Richard, and then TJ, and then Chris.
I totally vote for watching The Mandalorian and picking out screen and background errors, which is what I've basically been doing for the last few weeks anyway.
Let's do that. We'll Mandalorian definitely high on the list. I mean, I definitely eventually want to do episode 1 because I worked on it, but I want to do it after we've gotten it all kind of figured out, so that if I invite Stu Maschwitz and other people that I worked with on the film, that it's, we've gotten all the weirdness out of it, of how, like, we figured out how to do it cleanly. Go ahead, TJ, and then Chris.
That party watch feature is built directly into Disney now.
Yeah, it's only six people. Like, it's like what am I supposed to do with that? Like, those idiots. Like, why would they? There's a free service that does it for hundreds, and we did it for 6. This is a typical like Hollywood idiot, coming up with something and creating there's no reason to not have it all be hundreds. It's just that there's some accountant that's trying to figure out why. I don't even know why you wouldn't want to let hundreds of people watch it at the same time. It's just goofy.
Well, all 6 have to be subscribers though, right?
Yeah, everybody has to be subscribers to be in it. But I don't understand why you wouldn't let 1,000 people or 2,000 people. This is like a killer app for these companies. And the fact that they limit it to 6 is just stupid. Like, it doesn't, like, I can't even, usually I can see, I know why they did that. That because of this, and this, and I give them, but I can't calculate why you would not want to let thousands or even hundreds of thousands. Maybe it could be the fact that it would put a lot of pressure on the servers if it was hundreds of thousands, but there's so many things. Anyway, what we're going to do is prove why that model makes sense. Go ahead, Chris.
I was wondering, I realize everybody has to be a subscriber, but has there been any talk about, and I'm fairly certain about this, that there's a new law that goes into effect, I believe tomorrow, in the US at least, and I could be wrong, that makes it a felony to stream copywritten material. Has anybody heard of this in the States?
It's not a I don't think it's a felony, but I think that this was part of the aid package that went out, that was signed, that has proven that all of our representatives we're only going to talk about politics here for 1 second. All of our representatives in the United States are corrupt and paid for by the Hollywood and telecommunications. Like just make sure that we're clear that it has turned me harder than anything I've ever seen to take an aid package and hide a copyright bill that they couldn't get through because, SOPA and all this, they just slid it in. They just slid it in, and these, they're so bad, anyway. So like, I don't ever want to hear an American politician talk about corruption ever again, ever. It is the most corrupt thing I've ever seen someone do. I mean, I'm sure there's things that are more corrupt, but to take something that the public constantly fought every single time they tried to do it, and then they just stuck it into a bill that we have to sign this bill. It is highway robbery. Executed by our elected officials. So anyway, it's so to your point, Chris. Yes, what it does is I don't know if it's a felony, but what it does is it creates a extrajudicial group that doesn't have to follow due process, that can kind of come after you for copyright material. Now, we're not streaming that copyright material. Right. That's why, one of the reasons I haven't done this is that what you really want to do is stream it and talk about it and everything else. Now everybody has to be super clear, and I think that this will, I think in the end, this twist on copyright is going to end up damaging the entertainment industry. I know that they're trying to hang on to every little bit that they can in a digital world, but what it's going to push people towards is like stuff like this, where there is no copyright. Like, we're not breaking any copyrights here, and so people will move away from that content, and it's harder to produce that content. Like when you don't allow your songs and your videos and everything else to be used on YouTube and on TikTok and everything else, you're basically slowing down. Half of our hits this year was TikTok. So if you take those songs away, you basically are killing your own business. And I think that people are finding other ways to enjoy all this stuff. And I think that the entertainment industry is eating itself, and it's doing it by corrupting our politicians with lots of money. Leland?
Just a comment on the whole Netflix party thing. It is being renamed to Teleparty, and it is already the new name. They just haven't changed the website yet. Yeah. One other thing, it's kind of like with the streaming of copyright material, if you're trying to charge for it, you're in immediate imminent danger. But we find is fair use is obvious. You have the ability to converse over copyright material.
Well, we can do it because we're not streaming it. So
yes,
we are letting everybody watch it at home on their own. We're not doing, and there's nothing we're doing that's even close to, because we're just talking about something. Everyone's streaming it to their own device in a paid-for subscription. So there's nothing with Netflix Party that is a problem. But what the problem is that what went into that bill, and this is important for us to understand as media artists, is the ability for an organization to basically shake people down and say, you did this thing. The fine is going to be $30,000, but we'll let you pay $600 and get out of it. And most people are not going to be able to. They're just going to pay the $600, and so it's going to allow the entertainment industry and their little lackeys to basically shake people down that don't have the money to fight it. Now, I think that what will happen is a backlash, which is already, is going to happen. And I'm already, I come from a family of lawyers. This is a juicy one to mess with people. If they want to have a little fight, I know some scrappers. So I think that we're going to I think that eventually it'll end up in the Supreme Court and it'll be struck down. The current Supreme Court is pretty constructionist, and they'll be like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And so I think that, I don't think it's constitutional, but I think that there'll be a couple of years before it's taken out that it'll cost a lot of people a lot of money. In the middle of all of it, and I think it's important for us to call them to the mat over it and make them talk about it all the time, because they slid it in the dark of night, not thinking that it's just going to go in and no one's going to pay attention. and we should definitely remind them that we understand what they did. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Alex, assuming you're going to be camped in front of a TV screen for the Steelers-Browns game at noon on Sunday, what do you think about making that a test run for your?
I still think there's enough Steeler fans in the group to make it worth doing it for the Steelers. We had talked to a bunch of ex-Steelers about doing it, and just their timing didn't work out. I'd rather do it in something that we know already. Which I
want to root for the Browns, so it'll be exciting.
There we go. Go ahead, Courtney, and then we'll move on. We've taken this one a little too long.
My fear is that if the legal solution to copyright enforcement is untenable, as Alex says, it becomes just a shakedown, that they're going to move like they tried to do in the 80s to digital rights management, where they mandate that all copyright be analyzed by your home entertainment equipment and all audiovisual equipment, check in with the server somewhere before it plays something and goes to black. And it's going to be a nightmare for all of us that produce media, because they're going to mandate, a hardware solution if they can't get their money via,
well, the issue is that the subscription services have already made it much easier for us to do this. And I mean, like, why there's a lot less piracy because the subscription services are already inexpensive for us to just have that piece. We don't need to pirate the software, the songs or the videos much anymore. Like, so the demand, the push for this has dropped dramatically because we're paying a small amount of money and we get open access to it. So I don't think that's really as big of a deal, and it's tied to our devices, and we don't so a lot of this has become. And the other thing is that the uncopyrighted material is taking over. I mean, you look at TikTok. I mean, my kids don't ask to watch a TV show. Literally, my kids come over and say, "Hey, do we want to watch TikTok?" like they just want to sit there and watch TikTok. They don't want to. And so the thing is that the vast majority of content, I believe, is going to be high quality content that you see on Apple TV and Netflix and Disney Plus and HBO Max. So what I would say is $50,000 a minute and above is going to be a big market. Educational material that's useful for us on a day-to-day basis is going to be a great market, and disposable content is going to be a great market. And then, of course, live interactions and stuff. Those are big markets. But all this mealy mouth in between content is gone in 10 years. Like, it's like that stuff is not going to be, this kind of in between, not very high quality and not very interactive and not very educational. No one's going to watch that anymore. And it's just a matter of an older generation, stopping watching TV for natural causes. And so the thing is but the next generation is not going to watch any of that. And so I think that the entertainment industry has to figure out how to, and making it harder to watch their content is not going to make it more popular. Next question.
Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas, on the panel says, Vimeo, it's $15 a month or $180 for a year. Is it worth it? Should I worry about it going the way of Google Plus? I want to use it for streaming to multiple social destinations.
I'll go ahead, Tucker.
To stream with Vimeo, unless something's changed very recently, it is $900 a year. You have to get into that tier of account, and it's that tier or enterprise. And my understanding is enterprise is way more money. If you need to stream to multiple destinations, check out restream.io or get into Media Live in AWS.
Yeah, I go ahead, Bill, and then Leo.
Yeah, streaming, I think those are exactly right. That's not how I use it. I have two systems that work in conjunction with each other. I use Frame.io for inter-client communications because it is a walled garden and it is utterly secure, and everybody who I know who works on big projects wants their material embargoed until they're ready for the public facing. At the moment that is approved, I switch them to Vimeo Pro. Same file, switch it over to Vimeo Pro. It is public facing. It has excellent embedding capabilities for people who want to put content on their own websites. But, and I learned, I think they both use one of the big cloud services because it's instantaneous to move from one to the other. So in a production pipeline, I find it valuable to have both of those.
Yep. Go ahead, Leo.
So I find I use Vimeo for transfer of videos and for internal getting the videos ready and holding them. But the big thing you've got to think about is where's your library going to be long term, where you're going to need your information. Transferring libraries between things is really difficult, or it can be if you've got a large library. We're using Dailymotion for stuff that we don't want to put out onto social media. We find that has been a big uptake in Europe recently with Dailymotion over there. The other alternatives are things like JW Player, but we found that Dailymotion is a good example.
Almost all of our clients use Vimeo for for a clear listed, like I don't want to have a, I just want to put it on my website. I don't want to have a click through like YouTube. I don't want to, those types of things. Vimeo has been really popular. We all use, I use Frame.io for projects where we just literally put up all the file, everything, all the source files up there, and for backend. And then Vimeo, I think, is really taking the high ground as far as if you want to stream with a, again, embedded without click-throughs, where you have a lot of control over the player. It is expensive, so you have to make sure that it's something you're doing professionally. But it does give you a lot of capabilities when it comes to that process that I haven't seen in a lot of other services. If you're just doing it to stream to other services, I don't know if it's worth it. I think I would use, I would use AWS or Restream.io, but for I want to stream to a page and embed it, I think it's been a pretty popular one. Jeffrey and then Paul.
Really quick on Dailymotion. If they feel that you violated any of their rules, they will ban you from the account and you will never be able to get back in. That's one thing on that. As for Vimeo, if you can do it, go for it.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul, and then Leo.
So let me get this right. To stream, it'd be $900 a year on Vimeo, but to embed on a web page, say I wanted to store 20 or 30 or 40 videos on a web page, that would be I could do that at the consumer rate.
You could do it in a lot of different ways, yeah. But that would be the easiest way to do it. Would be Vimeo. Go ahead, Leo.
Going back to the streaming, if you're going to use streaming, native to every platform makes a huge difference. You shouldn't be trying to sit there and do it from one platform and then take the video and put it on another. For example, taking from YouTube and putting it onto Facebook. If you're going to live stream, you have to use their native things, and I would always use Restream. We do a lot. We've definitely used Restream a lot. There's some blind spots in Restream that drive me a little crazy. So that's why we're leaning more and more towards AWS, where we can control how it's built and what we do with it. But it's a much harder thing to get into. And we are going to bring some more of the AWS folks in. The other thing to know about Vimeo is that they'll build apps for you. So if you want to have your own brand app, or if you're doing it for a client, you want it to be on the Play Store and the Apple Store, Apple TV and iOS and everything else. There's a service that Vimeo does that will then support all your videos up there. You can set subscriptions, you can do live streams to it, you can do all these other things. It costs more money, but just know that they're the only one, they're the furthest along, I guess is what I'd say. But definitely, if you're just using it to stream to other services, I would use Restream over that. Go, Bill.
In Vimeo, I think, Paul, it might be good to look at the features of Vimeo Pro as opposed to the plain vanilla Vimeo that's public facing. There are some extra things you have with passwords and security. It's not at the level of Frame.io, but it gives you, I think, a little more flexibility. So look at the different features of the tiers. I think it's only a couple $100 a year, and that's where I am.
Next question.
Moving on to Leo Mendel of London, who's here with Mukana platform used by office hours is really interesting, and I'd like to use it for another event. Is it a product that I can license?
Soon. I know I keep on saying that, but we're really close. Chris is working on we've got a couple projects going through right now, and what we need, the only thing that's missing right now is the admin tool so that you could actually build an event. So like most people work on the admin tools first. Like they're really excited about the front end, and then they'll get to the actual useful parts. We built all the useful parts first. And so we got that working, but we don't have a front end that lets people manage it. And so we hope to have that done in the next couple of weeks. So by the end of January, definitely ping me again. And we definitely planned it. We want to get it out into beta. So it's not really a licensing thing. We want to get people out there using it outside of us because right now, Mukana largely looks the way this group likes it to look because we've incorporated hundreds of requests into the system, and so it works. If you like what this does, then it works great. If you don't like it, it doesn't work great. Go ahead, Hasmukh, and then Leo.
Hopefully, you'll have it ready by 21st of January because that's when I have my medical event.
We can definitely make that work. For individual ones, ping me and we'll figure out. It's just that it means that Chris has to build something for you for it to work. It's not like I can hand it to you and do it. If you need to use it for something earlier than that, ping me on Discord and we'll figure it out. We just have to. It just means Chris has to spend some coding time setting up your event to make that work. Go ahead, Leo.
I'll be more flexible. A 22nd of January when I've got a world WordPress
contact
conference.
Contact us. I want other people to use it. You just need to know that it's beta, and but
it's okay. It's for the whole of the global audience of WordPress, so it's nothing major. They'll love it.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. So let's we, and the other thing to know is that it most of it's there's two pieces to it. One is Commenda and the other one is Mukana. Commenda basically scrapes social networks for all the comments and brings them in and lets us manage them. That has handled hundreds of thousands of users. Mukana has handled thousands, not tens of thousands, but thousands of users at a time. So you just have to kind of keep in mind that our high watermark, I think, is over 1,000, but not over 2,000. And so it is you'll be in the outer space, in the outer atmosphere, if you take it on for a project that has more than 2,000 people. Paul, and then George.
I just want to hear more of your marketing pitch for Mukana, Alex. How does it compare to other similar, competitive chat systems, like, say, for example, what Leo Laporte uses or other podcasters or other streamers use? What's your elevator pitch for Mukana?
Well, it's mostly there's a bunch of things that aren't exposed right now that it will be able to do. So what we're doing is the pretty simple version of it. But the big thing about Mukana is that we've done it, used it in probably more events than most people have. And when you have a programmer and a presenter designing it, and you use it every day or use it often, you end up with a lot of tools that, there's a lot of little tools in Mukana that you just don't see in IRC chats or in Slido. And we were very excited that Slido got bought by Cisco because, Cisco is where technologies go to die. They just get ripped up into little pieces and eaten by the machine, like same with Amazon, so we were like, Slido was the closest thing to what Mukana did. And so the fact that it doesn't mean Cisco will be very successful with it. They'll make it available to their partners as an add-on to their hardware and everything else, but there's no real competition anymore.
Yeah, and speaking of Slido, I just watched a Slido presentation with Hugh Forrest and the people who run Slido, and it's really interesting. I'd recommend it as homework for before Hugh comes on to the show next week.
Most people that we know that are using both Slido and Mukana or exposed to both of them would prefer Mukana. That's kind of what we've gotten the feedback from. It has a lot of other tools in it in the back end related to being able to manage comments more effectively. So there's just a lot of management tools that come out of broadcast. So when broadcast trucks, like I get hired to just go in and manage comments for an event. And a broadcast truck usually braces for impact. Like, how am I going to get the lower thirds and how is this all going to work? And I come in and I go, okay, we're done. And they're like, we're all set up. Can you see the lower third? And they're like, yeah, I can see the lower third. And they're like, okay, and then they don't know what else to do with what I'm all the rest of my time. I just sit there and,
I sent a message to Hugh. I said, check out Mukana because you might need it around March. You're going to need something.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot more to it, but the Q&A thing is a cute piece. Go ahead, Dan.
The question is, when is Zoom gonna contact Mukana and buy them up? You guys?
I don't know. I mean, I'm more interested in just getting Mukana tighter into Zoom, and so we're kind of trying to look at where Zaps would let us do stuff so that it could be tied tighter in. I don't think Zoom's interested in buying what we're doing necessarily, but and again, it's what you see on it is a very small piece of a much larger piece of machinery. Go ahead, George.
How is Mukana going to handle bringing players in? I know I could see it on YouTube in Mukana, but it's just an embed. Can I bring my own player?
Yeah, Mukana doesn't care. You just put it. You can embed anything you want. It's just a video. It's a video window. It happens to use YouTube. for that we happen to use YouTube, but it doesn't care, what that window looks like. Next question.
Moving on to James Babbitt here in San Diego. If M1 MacBook Pros only have 2 ports and you connect audio and video to separate ports, where would you connect power?
No, you have to. Well, I haven't bought it. That's why I haven't bought any of the laptops, is because they only have 2 ports. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, Apple. I put the link in for the Apple device, but also OWC has a good one coming. It's on order. It hasn't been developed yet, but yeah, there is only one caveat. Some of the third-party power supplies don't work through the adapters.
Right.
I think Victor's got one.
Leo, and then Victor.
Yeah, the OWC is on my desk. It came in 2 days ago, and it's working great.
Yeah. Leo, and then Richard.
Yeah, so there's in there the new M1s have got Thunderbolt 4. The old ones are Thunderbolt 3. So if you actually pull out on Thunderbolt rather than USB, you're going to get more of the data out. You're going to also be able to plug in power supplies. But be aware, a lot of the cheaper ones the connectors are all only USB. They're not Thunderbolt.
Yep. Go ahead, Richard.
I'm quite excited to see that Victor's got the OWC. I use the OWC Pro docks quite a lot, the ones that do work as power supplies with their own CFast readers and things like that. But with the newer laptops, at least not the M1s, but the bigger, the 4-port laptops, even those don't supply enough power to keep the laptop at full power when you're actually pushing that laptop hard. And I'm talking about just offloading data using
Zoom.
Something like HDE.
Literally, if it won't support, if you do Zoom, it won't, you're slowly draining negatively, going through it. Yeah, it doesn't, Zoom is, this kind of video and stuff, but yeah, it's getting power through the docks.
I've redesigned a lot of my next rig to only use 3 of the ports on the laptop because I just have to use the mains power supply. I have to have 100 watts of power coming in.
Yeah,
and, that's a real downside.
My typical thing for that is that if I have 4 ports, I won't buy a laptop without 4 of those. It's bad enough that they're USB-C. So I only get things with 4 ports, and 1 is audio, 1 is video, 1 is power, and then the other one is a breakout that does everything else I needed to do. And I found that that's reliable. It will work almost all the time with almost everything, is to push everything else into that last breakout box of whatever I'm going to do. Jeffrey, and then George, and then Leo.
Yeah, here's the problem. Thunderbolt 3, they only said that you could plug in 6 at the most into a bus. And if you had a MacBook Pro, you had 2 buses, so you could plug about 12 items into each of those 4 ports. They have not said done any recommendations on how many devices you can actually plug into a Thunderbolt 4 port yet. And that's going to be the key right there, because you can definitely overload any of those, even though the first was a USB 1.0. They said, oh, yeah, you can throw in 128 different USB devices. You'll be fine.
I think my tendency is that
changed. Yeah.
I just throw more computers at things. So I have a tendency not to run out of port. I don't run out of things added to the port, because if I have that many things added to a port, I don't have confidence that the computer can actually do that anyway. So I tend to then have another computer doing it. George, and then Leo, and then Victor, and then Chris, and then we'll move on.
So I just had this hour-long conversation with Larry a few days ago from OWC. So definitely what Richard was talking about. I see it all the time with my Pro dock, just not getting full charge. But OWC is not the dock that Victor have. There's another dock that they're just coming out with, and that will do 90 watt charge. So that's, if you're looking to maintain, you might want to look at that dock that's coming out that does 90 watts versus the 60 that I have.
Yep. Go ahead, Leo, and then Victor.
So sometimes what I've ended up having to do is run the mains in, and then run on a number of the docks. They actually have a USB-C connector in, and I run a second power supply into that.
Yeah, and that's what we've talked about. Sometimes they just don't pass enough power is the issue. Go ahead, Victor, and then Chris, and then we're going to...
Just real quick, it is 60 watts. This one is 60 watts. It'll handle 4K and 8K displays, and so far it's worked like a charm.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, and I posted this in Mukana, I too, George, did a show with Larry from OWC a few months ago, and all we talked about was Thunderbolt 4. And Thunderbolt 4 is really interesting. The data rates aren't any faster for stuff, but it's mostly changes in power management. So it's worth digging into it and It's kind of a fun show.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Ray 3 Maxwell, who we have not heard from before, I don't believe, says, using Brio cameras, how do I use the zoom feature while on Zoom? Logic Capture says the camera is unavailable.
So you want to use it. So Ray wants to use it, I think, with he was here a second. He was here before. Oh, yeah, there you are, Ray. So Ray, you want to use it. You want to control the zoom while you're in Zoom, right? Or control Zoom. So to make this less, you want to control the camera zoom while you're in the application Zoom. Is that right?
Exactly. You can see my ugly shelves are sticking out on either side of my green screen.
Right. Yeah. So what we would typically use as webcam settings is, it's a $7 app or whatever. I wouldn't use the Logitech software on the Mac. I find it to be painful. But Logitech webcam settings will, and there's also another one called manual camera, but I've gone back to webcam settings for most of my stuff. And I feel like I get a little more control, and it'll have zoom in the advanced page, and then you can zoom focus will be in the advanced page along with color management and so on and so forth.
Great. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Leo.
So I can swap over to a Logitech Brio really quickly here. And I find that if I do the move to the Brio, I have to change my settings before I'm in the Brio, which you can do on my Mac. I can do that before, but if I go and open it up and try and make the changes when the Brio is active in...
and you're using the Logitech software?
Yeah, the Logitech software.
And are you on
Mac,
the PC?
I didn't...
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, and I think you'll find the webcam settings doesn't care. Like, it'll just do it.
Yeah.
The only thing about it is just know that anytime you open any external control for a webcam that can see your internal, if you have a 2018 or newer Mac, if it sees that camera in webcam settings, whether you made any adjustments or not, that camera will go gray as a security feature that it will go gray, and you won't be able to get your internal camera back until you restart your computer. And that's Apple keeping people from jumping in your webcam while you're in your bedroom. Go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry, I had to get the mute. Well, can't Ray click on the little three dots in the gallery view and adjust his own request control of his Brio from there? I know I can request it from here and zoom in for him, but can he do it himself?
I don't think you can do it to yourself. I don't think you can request your own.
Right.
Yeah,
click on
I
the
don't think
little
that's possible.
three dots in the upper right hand.
Go ahead. Leland and then Paul, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it sounded originally like you were running into a conflict error with Logitech Capture and Zoom grabbing your camera ahead of time. Because you're saying in Logitech Capture, it's saying the device is not available. It's because someone else or some other application
but
is
the thing
already
is that,
using it. Well, he can't adjust it with that software if it's already grabbed by Zoom.
No, webcam settings will take it on immediately. Yeah, it's not webcam settings doesn't care whether you're in Zoom or not. It's just Logitech.
Oh, if you're using the Logitech webcam, he said he was using Logitech Capture, not the webcam.
I know, but I'm saying,
webcam settings.
But webcam settings will work and Logitech Capture won't. Just because they're being good. Oh, you got it working, Ray. So and did you do that? You're doing that
I'm
from
doing
within?
it. Fenwick is doing it.
Oh. So Ray, you just have to come up here every day and have them readjust your camera, and then you'll be set.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. This is a good reason to do it. All right. Next question.
Moving on to David from Sweden. That's all it says. Alex, as a reference point for us who don't do events, is office hours a relatively big or relatively small event? What would be added in the next size up?
It's relatively small. I mean, it's a comfortable size. Between YouTube and Mukana's audio streaming and Zoom, a couple hundred people concurrent. We hit about 400 to 600 a day uniques. So that's kind of the number. I would say that's compared to most of the events I work on, it's a pretty small event and comfortable. As we grow it next year, the big thing that'll happen is we won't be able to answer all the questions. That'll be the first thing. The first thing that'll happen, is we won't be able to answer all the questions every time, and so voting will become more important as we go into that. Is that people will really prioritize. People will get much more intense about the voting because it will mean more because we don't get to the bottom of the list every day. I think that is part of that puzzle. Of course, the pre-shows and post-shows and other things that we're adding are actually building the groundwork for that to happen, so that if someone really needs a question answered, they can jump into the post show and still ask it. And so there's a bunch of different ways that we're kind of I'm building up informal solutions to solve the problem that I think will happen sometime in the middle of the year. As we get to there are places that we can go to, or places, things that Mukana can do that we can, start answering questions, for instance, via text. So, and then as you scale up, we can actually answer a lot of questions via text. If you, with a handful of people in the back end. So let's just say we take 6 of our normal panelists each day. This wouldn't happen right now, but let's say we had 3,000 or 5,000 concurrents inside of this. We could have a handful of people like Chris managing, different thing, editing questions, and someone else managing DaVinci questions, someone else managing 3D questions, and you have one person just passing them back and forth. And those tools are already built into Mukana. We just don't use them here, where you can answer. And in that platform, you saw us use it inside of the Dolby Summit. That was a couple of months ago, where different people inside of Dolby were answering those questions. And what was happening is one person sending it to the right person to answer the question. And then there's a whole bunch of text questions that are being answered at the same time that the video questions are doing. And we started doing that with a previous version of Mukana 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Anyway, but what we're able to do at that point is answer about 150, 200 questions an hour, in that platform. And so you can, for a product launch, or for us, it would hopefully be every day, it would be something different. Now, that would change a whole bunch of structures. We'd have to turn it into something that, we'd have, paid staff to do and lots of other things. And so, right now I'm comfortable with it being this nice little informal thing where we get to all the end of the questions and we don't have to do that. But as we grow, we'd have to start building more infrastructure. Generally, everything, anything is possible that you can imagine and build structure for. So we have to build structure for it. And I'm laying some of the foundational work by creating the post show and the pre-show and the mic checks and the process, and all that stuff is slowly laying out it's still like empty, like empty foundation with some tents on it, like that we can all go in and hang out. But it's being built there so that we can manage growth if it occurs. So but a lot of this year was really about, the first 3 months was, first 2 months was me just figuring out whether it would be possible to do this. And then the next part was, figuring out, how to get a structure out of it. So we're still playing with it, and in the midst of that, I have a full-time job. So that isn't this. So go ahead, Sky.
So when you would go into fresh territory, let's say we all land on the moon, what is the infrastructure pieces that you would build first? Toilets, sewers, police systems? What systems build a community? What systems support, sustain moving forward?
There's a couple things that we did. Well, there's a couple things that we did that I think made sense, which was, number one is we made it a clean show. I mean, it's just, so there was a couple rules that I knew were useful in the past. So number one is everybody uses real names. Number two, everyone has to put their video on if they're going to talk. Number three, clean show. Number four, no religion, no politics in general, unless it affects our industry. So you'll see me get really acidic about certain things, and I'm very, it's not that I'm non-political or not, it's just that I don't talk about it here. And so, if it affects our industry, I'll talk about it a little bit because it affects us. But outside of that, I try to stay out of the general mix of that here. So a lot of it is creating a sense that everyone, number one is that they see what they're like, what makes them similar, not what makes them different. So, and so I'm not against politics or religion. It's just that it tends to be used as a way for us to separate ourselves from each other as opposed to connect to each other, and so that's why I tend to not engage in it very much. Again, I think we do the best we can at being very respectful in general of multiple cultures, we tend not to do a lot of things that the internet tends to do quickly, just inappropriate male behavior is kind of something that we tend to and it's not, we've had some little hiccups here and there, and we clamp down on it pretty hard to make sure that that stays appropriate. And part of it is buy-in. You know, you build these things, you can't. The problem that most of social networks have is people want to keep on growing. They want to scale, right? They're worried about quantity, and what I was really worried about is quality. You know, like the quality of the people that are in here, that we're all supportive of each other, that we're all willing to play this game within the rules that we think make sense, and just letting people who don't agree with that go somewhere else. You know, and most people want it to be like, but you're giving up all these viewers. Yeah, but you know, it has to be something we all want to get up and do every day. You know, and so if there's a lot of strife and upset and process and people get stressed out and everything else, it's not something we all want to do every day. And I think that a lot.
I come for the Tucker sightings, so my day is complete. My day is complete.
I come for the Charlie sightings, and I'm disappointed today, Tucker.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, and I, you know, I think that I have been thinking, I've been asked by a couple brands to figure out how to do this for their brand. And I don't know how to do that yet. Like, I don't know how to, like, we built it at a certain time in a certain place, and I don't know how you would just put it on the moon. You know, it's like people think that they can just build a city from scratch, and almost nobody's ever been successful at doing that. You know, Brasilia, other ones, you're trying to build something from scratch that is hard. You know, things happen organically. And so I think this happened organically.
Quickly get the backstory on Brasilia. Is that the Ford? That's the Ford. Brasilia was Ford.
I don't remember who did it.
Henry Ford.
Yeah, it was you know, the idea to build a giant city all from scratch that was perfect, and you could just do it all at one time, and it was just difficult, you know. And I spent a lot of time studying urban development, so it's, you know, it's a good example of what not to do. Anyway, so I think that you know, we'll keep on experimenting with it imperfectly, you know, and I'm always very humbled that everyone keeps on showing up as we figure this out. So I think it's just an amazing group that I love seeing every day.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you. Anyway, next question.
I think Ken Jones wants to talk about color sampling science here. 442, 4 of what? 2 of what? What's the difference when one of these parameters changes?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I mean, you basically have to go back to the human eye. It's got more rods than cones, so we see luminance better than we see color. And so we made a video system that can mimic that or falsify that, or I don't know, copy that in some way, shape, or form. But when you get to digital and, you know, Bayer patterns and that kind of stuff, you're actually trying to reduce your data flow.
Yeah, and so specifically 422 is YUV, and it is 4 samples of Y, which is the luminance, to what Roscoe just said, and then 2 samples, so half the resolution of the U and the V. So basically the color channels, you're actually getting half the resolution that you get of the luminance, because we found that, you know, and literally you can, if you want to test this, just go into Photoshop, open up convert it to YUV, and blur the UV channels by 2, 3, 4 pixels. You won't notice it. You know, like you know, it'll look a little bit, but you'll still think the photo's there because all the colors are close enough, you know, for what they need to be. And so for general video, that works fine. When we start talking about green screen and graphics and so on and so forth, that starts to fall apart. So because you're now keying, you're building an image based on a 422 signal or a 420 signal or a 411 signal. As you get into DV and H.264 and all these other things, they throw away more colored channels. And so the when you start keying that's why everyone's keys that work on Zoom don't work that well, is because they're keying something that has already been beaten pretty badly, you know, into the ether. Now, if you do an example of when it works is when I was keying previously with a Constellation, I'm keying at 4K, and then I'm scaling down to 1080p, and the process of that is oversampling those edges, and so that helps put that all back together. Go ahead, Bill.
And a lot of people don't understand the U and V is just a mathematical way to take the RGB, red, green, and blue signals, and mathematically determine 3 colors in 2 expressions. So YUV is how it deals with RGB in lumens in 3 things.
Next question.
Dan Huber.
Did you want to say? I'm sorry, Roscoe. Did I miss something? Did you have?
Oh no, that's what I was just gonna. What Bill just said. So if you take anything, when you look at that vector scope that's round, you can get to any point on the vector scope with two vectors. You go towards blue and then hang a left towards yellow, and that's really, if you think about it, that's really what the 2-2 is, the U and V.
Yep. Next question.
Perfect. Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania says, I've only ever used webcams for online meetings. When you use cameras and iPhones, do they start to run hot for prolonged use?
I would say it just really depends on whether they are designed to be video cameras or not. So if they're still cameras, they can get really hot. Most cameras that are designed to be video are designed to be on as long as they need to be. Go ahead, Paul, and then Leo.
Yeah, I do a lot of time lapse. I capture the sunrises outside my window here, and I let my iPhone go around the clock, no problem. It doesn't overheat. Of course, it is winter. That helps.
Go ahead, Leo.
So I'm running on a Panasonic Lumix GH3. It's on all the time. It's connected. It's normally connected on one of these, but it's on a Blackmagic at the moment. And it never overheats. It runs and runs and runs all the time. And it's solid.
As a still camera, I think Panasonic got way ahead with the GH series in general, where they really built it more for, really accepted that a lot of the use of it will be video. What got people caught up is like the Canon. Canon didn't expect people to do what they were doing with it. And so they didn't really build the heat distribution in a way that made sense. TJ, and then Jeffrey, and then Peter.
The Sony A7 that I'm looking into right now has been on for a month straight without being powered down. No problems. But it's Sony. They're a big video company.
Yeah, that doesn't help a lot in some cases, but yes, it does help here.
Not for Canon, no, but for Sony, I think
we've told the story. Canon couldn't figure why they didn't do 2997 is because they're still engineers weren't allowed at the time to talk to the video engineers, and so they just made up their own stuff, and it didn't turn out very well. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Mickey.
One thing that saves webcams from overheating is just the fact that it takes a very little power to power them. There's no batteries next to them. That's a big problem with a lot of cameras. Is you get these battery packs and the charging packs all in one box. That's going to overheat the box overall. So webcam, you should be able to have it on all the time. I don't think I've ever heard of a webcam that's overheated.
Good, Mickey, and then Sky.
Yeah, apologies for the fireworks in the background. 2 minutes to midnight. Happy New Year. Yeah, for iPhones, I've played around with video camera apps, and the phone does get unusually hot. But yeah, if it's designed to actually be a video cam, yeah, it will get warm, it will get hot, high red cameras, but it's designed to take that abuse.
It's great. It's great that you. Anyway, go ahead, Sky, and then
Happy New Year, Mickey.
Yeah,
Happy
we're
New
almost
Year.
there. We're almost
New Year,
there.
Mickey.
We're almost there. We're
Leo.
He's got.
How do you power your GH3, please? How do you physically plug that in? I keep changing batteries out, so I guess that would.
Great when you get asked a question that you actually can actually answer straight away. It's just got a battery saver replacement, one of these. So you just plug it straight in. It goes straight into there. I was going to also say that I had an NEX5 before, a Sony NEX5, and it just overheated when you're trying to do any video runs.
Yeah. And here it goes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Mickey.
Happy New Year.
Yay.
And congratulations. You're the first of us to escape 2020 successfully.
In this panel, yeah, we had someone earlier that was coming in from Melbourne, so they were already ahead of us.
New Zealanders and Australians today.
Yeah. Peter?
I was going to say, it's one of the reasons I stuck with my Sony AX100 as my video camera. It is a video camera. It's a 4K video camera that provides clean output, so why not use it?
Yeah, absolutely. Dan?
It's good to hear, because we do have a bunch of Lumix cameras, Panasonic, at our university that just sit in a closet. They're now, we can repurpose them in some of the classes as a
they'll look
secondary
great.
source.
The only thing to know is if you start shortening that depth of field, people just need to know what they're doing. Like they just need to know, they need to know that it's a short depth of field, or they'll be out of focus the whole time.
This is a GH3. It's not even a GH4 or 5 or whatever is the latest version. It's a GH3 with a 1.14 lens, and I love it. I
Looks
love
great.
it. Absolutely love
Yeah,
it.
looks great.
I've never seen anything so yellow on my screen before as your back wall.
Leland and then George.
Yeah, just something that wasn't mentioned. There are older DSLR cameras that had heat sensors built into them so that over time, if they did heat up, the cameras would shut off. So if you are looking at older hardware laying around the house or in the closet and you want to live stream with it, just test it. See if it turns itself off over a hour period of video processing.
George, and then we're going to move on. I'm going to go to the next question.
I would just like to say that my Blackmagic Micro has been on since the beginning of the year. Hasn't been turned off. So that's 12 months.
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Michael J. in New York City says, "Hi, Alex. I'm hosting a family New Year's Eve gathering in Zoom meetings later. I want to set up a room and play music from a laptop using Serato DJ in that room. Any ideas?"
The main thing is you want to use in the screen share, you want to use, go into advanced and go to music or computer sound only. And that's going to it's going to give you much higher quality and let you pipe that in. Go ahead, George.
If you have an extra laptop, just use your the music laptop as a player and your other laptop as your
And you can it'll play through that background. And I know some folks who have used it as kind of the background music for their thing. And you might as well do it this year because, as we talked about, it might be illegal next year. Next question.
Some guy got 6 votes. His name's Alex from Novato, California, and he says, "Is anyone using Substack? What do people think?"
Anyone reading it or publishing to it, or it looks like kind of a competitor to Medium. And I don't have it. I'm looking at it. We're looking at kind of where to put the kind of content that we're building, within office hours. And it's one of the things that I'm researching. I didn't know if anybody had any opinions, but it's like Medium. It's like you put your emails in though, and it sends the email out, and it's kind of an interesting platform. Paul?
Yeah, I listened to a podcast. Well, it actually wasn't a podcast. It was an article that was read to me on this new app that I'm really liking, and they had nothing but really great things to say about it from the publisher's point of view, that it's a great platform, beyond Patreon or anything else.
Yeah, and I don't really need the money aspect of it. I mean, that's not the model that I'm looking for, which is what a lot of people are using it for. But I'm just kind of curious as to whether people like the experience, and I'm trying to figure out whether it makes any difference. I'm still leaning towards just WordPress, but just thinking through it.
The people reviewing it, they loved it. They couldn't. Okay. They were just overflowing with praise.
Cool. All right. Next question.
Alex Olegnowitz in Toronto says, "Alex, how do you handle a bid where you're at a pricing disadvantage imposed by the gear manufacturer?"
I don't totally understand that question. I guess what I would say is that I bid on a lot of projects and they just cost what they cost to do. Like I'm not, and if I can't get there financially, then I just don't get the job. I know that sounds like a really simple answer to a complex question, but it's just like I don't try to figure out how much something's worth. I just figure out how much it costs to do it. And I just, I get into a spreadsheet and I lay it all out and I go, well, this is how much this costs for me to do that. And a client may be able to find a cheaper way to do it. Over the last 5 years, I haven't found a lot of clients that can find a way to do it better for less. So they can do it for less, and they sometimes choose that. But I don't usually think that the outcome turns out well for them because we're pretty efficient. Go ahead, Bill.
So I had a technique. I moved in most of my career to what Alex has always said. I gave them a number. This is what it's going to cost to do it. That number was built by me based on a whole series of factors, including the amount that I thought was fair to make on the project. But when I got a client said, I need a breakdown, I must have a breakdown, I had a sheet that I created in FileMaker Pro, and the very first line above the line was a production fee. And I told them at the very first meeting, this is what you're paying me to know how to make your video. So whatever this number is, that's what I'm going to make from you. Then everything else from that number down, we would hash out, we would organize it. I want this many cameras, I want that many cameras. Nobody in all the years I used that process ever once questioned my production fee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a psychological thing. It's like, if you're telling me I have to change that fee, it means that I'm not worth that. And then why are you hiring me?
Mm-hmm.
So the disclosure of this is my chunk.
Mm-hmm.
And in some big projects, it was a pretty big chunk.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny how nobody pushed back on that.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, when he says manufacturer, I'm thinking this is actually a turnkey system that he's trying to put together. I used to be the educational rep for ProMax, and of course, Apple pricing for colleges was level 4, and ProMax couldn't buy in at that level. So it was difficult to try and tell people, well, yeah, you can buy your computer cheaper, but who are you going to call when something doesn't work together? And so that was always the thing. So I'm thinking it's more of a bid on a turnkey system.
It might be. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Chris.
I think you mentioned John Schenk the other day, Alex. I can't remember in what context. I was cutting some pieces for him several years ago, and he had an interesting way of dealing with things. When he got to bidding stuff, he would give people a rate, and it was super high, and he just said, this is what I need to do, what you need to do. And he always brought great footage. It was like it was a joy to cut his stuff, but he didn't break it down because he didn't. And what he said to me is, he said, I don't want somebody to say, oh, I don't need that thing.
That's why
I don't want to pay for that thing. And he goes,
it tends to be the conversation I get into a lot with clients is, and I go back and forth. I mean, some clients, you just need to give them some kind of breakdown, for that to do it. But the 95% have been one line that just tells you how much this all costs. I'll line up all the things I'm doing. This is how many days, and this is how many people, and this is all the gear and everything else, but this is how much it's going to cost. And a lot of times the way I think about it is I would tell people, it's when you go to a restaurant, and people here have heard me say this before, but when you go to a restaurant, do you ask how much they're paying for the wheat, and how much they're paying for the tomatoes, or how much they're paying for how much are they paying the cook, and how much are they paying the electricity? No, you don't ask that. You ask how much the spaghetti is. I think when I used it in a meeting, I was like, and the spaghetti today is $14,000. I'll tell you, it's really good. Like the olive oil is straight from Italy. It's and they got a good chuckle out of it, and they never asked again. But I'm trying to move our clients more to think about a product as opposed to a service, like a broke down, what makes us special is the team we bring together, the gear we bring together, how we bring it together, all those things. And it just isn't really easy to say, oh, we're going to take this out and put this in, because a lot of those things are not replaceable. You can't just take it out. Like for instance, we used a bunch of lenses on the last shoot that I did. I rented those lenses as part of a larger package that got me a TD, and it got me a jib, and it got me a thing. And the lenses were all part of that package that I kind of worked up with a friend of mine to, get the stuff that I needed. When they went to itemize those lenses, they couldn't get anywhere close to what I had paid for the whole package. Because I knew that, when they try to find those lenses in LA, they couldn't find a rental package that could add up to that, because I was buying inside of a package. But that's why, to get to Chris's point and John Schenk's point, is when you pull something out, then that, if they had pulled a piece out of that, it would have made everything more expensive, actually not cheaper. So,
and on his end, it could have crumbled his creative tool.
Yeah, you can't get it done.
Don't take away my paintbrushes.
Exactly. George and then Sky.
So I just want to bid on a project I'm doing in February. So part of that was I revealed all of the day rates for the crew. So, your markup, whatever the case may be, give them what the rates are going to be for the crew, my production fee, and then everything about the gear was just list the gear, but not revealing what my pricing is, because obviously a lot of it is cross rental and so forth. So that's another approach you could take with it. Is give the client what the rates are going to be for the crew, but any production fee. But the gear part of it is kind of you have so much to do as far as the gear. It's not feasible for us to really reveal that.
See, the funny thing is I show the gear all the time, because I just use market rate for the gear. And so they go searching for it, they find that. And so even if you own it or you cross rental or whatever, you just say, this is how much this is the fair rate for that gear. And that's the thing that is the thing that what's interesting is that's the thing that's the least argued about, in the stuff that I do, is clients go, oh, well, hardware, you have to rent hardware. It is, I haven't had that to be an issue. Go ahead, Sky, and then Bill, and then Chris.
I love the concept of an office hours guild meeting that we're having. But Roscoe, to your point of turnkey, I'd love to hear your definition, because I know what I understand that term to be, but how do you refer to that turnkey?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Well, basically, if you take a Sony DV VCR, if you take an Apple, laptop or tower system, and you put it together, that's turnkey. When you're taking various manufacturers, packing it together, getting the right cables, getting the right, storage, all that kind of stuff, that's a turnkey editing system.
And you're making it work. It's not like it's, my first turnkey system that I built was designed for someone to be able to jump out of a plane with it on their back, and then they had to be able to land and start shooting, and edit and upload, from wherever they were in those areas, oftentimes under extreme stress, and so what you're figuring out in a turnkey system is how does it survive this many G's? What can it handle? How does it always work? And if something goes wrong, how do you pull something out? How do you pull something out of it, put something back into it, and make it work? And that's, you can go buy all that equipment for a lot less than the turnkey. But that turnkey is, I don't want to think about it, and I just want it to work. And I don't have the skilled staff that it would take to figure that out. Go ahead, Bill, and then Chris.
Yeah, the other thing I always wanted to do was have a linkage between the number that they saw and the amount of effort that went into it in this respect. You've told me that we want, you have this many shots. We storyboard this many shots. I said that's going to take 3 days to execute that many shots. If you suddenly tell me they have 2 days, it goes back to you and say, well, then which copy points do you want to not cover? Because I can't cover the same number of shots in 2 days instead of 3 days. So you can make that decision. I'm happy to cut it to a 2-day shoot, but you're going to lose copy points. Which ones? Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Years ago, I was doing a show for a local Emmy broadcast, and the producer, who was tech savvy, balked at one of my line items on the budget because it was, beta tape decks at, I can't remember, I think it was like $350 a day. And he's like, $350 a day? I can get them cheaper than that. And I said, by all means, you should do that. But you're responsible for them. You have to get them there. You have to set them up on site. And if something goes wrong, you could take care of it. But if you want me to take care of it, it costs $350 a day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's one of the reasons that we still had our own, we used mostly our own hardware, was because we could build it all up and make sure that it works over, we would build the entire kit in our warehouse, test it, put it out before we send it out. You can't do that with rental gear. Next question.
Moving on to Jose Ramos of San Juan. If I use royalty-free music from a paid service on a commercial video, can I keep broadcasting said video even after I cancel the subscription to that service? Am I allowed to keep using the music or assets on new projects?
Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Mickey.
Royalty-free music is not copyright-free music, bottom line. If you cancel a subscription, I have a subscription to Epidemic Sound. If I cancel a subscription, all my videos on YouTube will be grandfathered in. Like, they'll still play. But if I take that video and make it into a new video, or use that song into a different video, I won't be able to do that.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would read the terms of the track that you purchased. A lot of sites have different licensing structures on a single track. Like, you can pay a certain amount of money, you can pay more, you can pay less. So read the terms.
Duck, get under your desk.
Exactly. Next question.
Moving on to Madler from Detroit. And Madler says, Happy New Year. I'm running an Atmos Sumo 19 for commercial or video feature video assist. I need to stream the program feed. I'm using the Elgato 4K adapter. I'd love to hear thoughts on possible options. And that is Atmos Sumo 19. I'm so touchy about Atmos versus Atmos.
It's very confusing. I think overall, depending on what the quality of the stream that you need, that seems like a reasonable solution right now. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, you should just be able to get a program out of the HDMI or SDI out of the Sumo. A other options are, I mentioned, I think yesterday, the AJAU tab. There's also the Blackmagic Pocket, what do you call this, mini recorder as well. That's another way to get things in. Alex likes
video assist. That's theirs.
Oh yeah, and there's also.
But I think the video
which is-
assist will be like a 1080p solution. I think.
No, they have 4K versions now.
Okay, but I think the 4K version still puts 1080p out. You should look at that. I mean, we should look at the video assist. I think does 1080p out. We'll have an event here in the next 6 weeks or so. Within the next 6 weeks or so, that'll be another way to stream 4K to the internet. Go ahead, Richard.
I mean, if it's not 4K dependent, there are a ton of ways to do it.
Right.
Yeah. We do a lot of that sort of stuff just in general. Just none of it's really 4K. The 4K demand is kind of 4K demand is kind of rare for clients. So is the 4K really essential? I suppose is a follow up to that.
It seems like it is there. So we're gonna be doing more 4K. It's about to become a lot easier. That's all. It's already getting easy, but it's about to be a lot easier. And what you really want is to also just include bit depth. So 4K 10-bit would be useful for a lot of things, and because you can put a lot more color information in. So anyway, but I think that there'll be options in February, maybe earlier. We'll see. Anyway, so we'll show more things that are very compact and easy to use. Next question.
Our friend Brian Anderson of Silver Springs, Maryland says, I learned last night that my wife can't trigger her Blackmagic 6K to record with the ATEM Mini Pro unless there's a drive attached to the ATEM Mini Pro. Grr. I was planning to use the ATEM USB as a webcam output to avoid switching cables. Can a USB hub be used to connect a drive and a webcam out? And he notes, I don't care about the ATEM program recording. I don't need it.
Well, if you're trying to trigger, the other thing to know is that the iOS app works really well. So you get a ton of information back and forth, and the iPad/iOS app for the ATEM is kind of magical. So I would, it gives you tons of feedback of whether it's rolling, and you can execute it. So yeah, Richard.
I am actually just saying goodbye. I've got to duck out, guys. So thanks
See
to
you,
everyone,
Richard.
and Happy New Year's. Cool.
Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Take care.
Come back soon. All right. See you. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Well, the fundamental answer to the question they asked was no. It is either USB to disk or it's USB as a webcam. It doesn't behave as both at the same time. Like
But yeah, I would definitely research the Bluetooth.
Oh yeah, no. I just dissuade yourself of the fact that you can't do both at the same time.
Yep. Next question.
I was trying to look up how to pronounce, I believe it's Helsinki or Helsinki, Belgium, and it comes from Christian Oliver there. And when speaking of Mukana, Alex mentioned lower thirds. Does he mean questions on screen? If yes, any chance to see how it looks?
Ask that tomorrow, and I should have it all set up where I can do that. I don't have it quite set up for that right now, but I could probably pop it up. We have a lot of tools that let you control it. Chris made a whole long list, colors and font sizes and everything else, and then it comes out. So there's a lot to control. And then so it has a bunch of tools. It's not like one look. It's how do you want it to look. So anyway, so we'll show more of that. We haven't used it much in this show, but I have to go. We're using it in another show soon. Anyway, next question.
George Kennedy from here in the panel says, and Washington, D.C., vMix users, how are you managing a vMix call that needs to be displayed vertically on an in-room display?
George.
So a little clarification. So we're bringing in Zoom guests. We have a hybrid event, so it's going out to the web. We also, CEO needs to be able to talk to Zoom guests. They want a vertical screen on the stage. So I'm using vMix, but vMix doesn't have a way of displaying vertical. So I actually had to turn the image on the side, which OBS and Wirecast does it natively. So I can't understand why vMix doesn't do that, but I have to put in a request. Is there any other easier solution? I know for bigger switches, I could do that easily with a Barco, or I'm not sure about the ATMs, the 4MEs and so forth. I don't know, Alex, do you know if the Constellation will do that natively?
Haven't tried. In the past, we've used, we've used manipulation hardware specifically that's designed to rotate the images. That's, and I can't remember what we were using, but they typically are. We did a bunch of work for a company that is primarily 9:16, and I know that in their conference rooms they needed to. This was a big problem. They had to rotate, but they had to rotate all of it, and I think that they ended up using some kind of Extron that allowed them to rotate it for each, because they had like 8 monitors they had to support and put stuff on, and I think that there was an Extron piece of hardware that was being used to do the rotate. Go ahead, Leland.
There's one thing you could do with vMix that might help a little, and I'll try to show this really quickly as a display feature. Basically, I'd have to screen share real quick though, Alex, if you don't mind, if I could get access to that.
That's a Mickey question.
Show somebody.
So Mickey wants to let you.
Mickey, would you please? In the new year. All right. In this case, what I tend to look for, if I can find a way to solve this problem, is up here in the preview pane of vMix, you have this little box in the corner that gives you a grid layout so that you can see whether you're on a way look, whichever way you want to go with. But if you set it to 19:6 or vertical 9:16, you'll see these 2 lines show up in the preview. That would help you to go over to that source. And if you double click that source, you can do the same thing. You can simply go to the crop and crop that window over to the size of the frame that you need, which is that white line that you see on the edge there. So at least this gives you a method and possibility of use that you could size your frame where you need it.
So here's the question.
But you need to look at what you're at.
If you rotate that, the question is, if it comes in 9:16, how can you rotate it into place?
Oh, they're flipping it the other way? Oh, I'm sorry. So. I thought they were looking to create 9:16 video with vMix. So that was what I was assuming.
That's a George question.
So you can stream on the streaming side of vMix, you could stream 9:16, but to be able to use like a display out, like to a monitor, you can't do my 9:16. So what I had to do is bring the image in at 16:9, then flip it on its side, and zoom it out to fill the screen, and just do a rotation of 1.57 to make it turn it on the side. I mean, it's still fine. It works, and we've done lots of that over the years. But right. I'm just surprised it's not easy to do that in vMix natively.
Right. Yeah, you could definitely rotate the image here with the
if you do 5:7
axis, whichever way. But
if you want to show it, but it will.
I'm just trying to show you what I'm just trying to show you what kind of outputs I can get with that. I know you can't see the other monitor, but if you run the full screen preview in vMix at the top of the software there, where you see the green light here at the top, that would allow you to broadcast, and that's the preview you see here on this monitor. So you can see how it's going to show up on display. It's just a hack. Don't get me wrong. This is not the ultimate way to do this, but it's a hack that you could use.
But you see in your monitor, you still have the black bars. So in order to get rid of that, you actually have to turn it on the side and fill the screen to be able to get that vertical.
That's correct. That is correct.
Next question.
Moving on to Ray Maxwell, who's in the panel today. I have a DJI X7 6K camera that produces 34 gigabyte files. I want to concatenate these files. Files are ProRes RAW. I've used MPEG Stream Clip. It is 32-bit.
You want to talk about that a little bit, Ray?
Yeah, I'm a drone flyer, and that's what I mostly do. I did some drone flying and helicopter flying, model helicopter flying for Tomorrowland here in Vancouver. And I get 34 gigabyte chunks out of the X7 camera from DJI. By the way, it's one of the only cameras that directly outputs ProRes RAW. And of course, I know with QuickTime Player, you can concatenate ProRes 444 or 422 or whatever, but you can't, it'll display ProRes RAW, but it will not let you do the trim or concatenate that you can with all the other QuickTime formats. And in the old days, in my old computer.
And when you say concatenate, you want to take all the clips and put them end to end? Is that what you build
exactly.
a string out?
I want one file for what I have shot, not chopped up in 34 gigabyte files.
I have to admit that I've always done that either Final Cut or Resolve. Just drag them all in, and they'll all just come in, and then I just export it back out again. That's been the approach
you can't export ProRes RAW from. You have to go to an editing format. ProRes RAW cannot be edited from Final Cut Pro.
Right. I haven't had to do it with ProRes RAW, so I have to think through that. Yeah, go ahead.
You're
Bill.
saying it can't be exported, but it can certainly be edited within, right?
Oh,
So
yes.
Where,
But
where
no,
are you
no.
trying to get to after that?
ProRes RAW comes in, and you have to choose a project format, and ProRes RAW is not one of them. You cannot edit in ProRes RAW. ProRes RAW comes in. You must then choose 422 or 444 or 422 HQ or whatever you want to edit in.
That's true. It's not an export format.
Yeah, it is not it is import only. And what is crazy is this really old program, MPEG Streamclip, which was 32-bit. I have an old Mac here, Mac Pro, and it will concatenate these just fine. It won't display them, but it'll concatenate them just fine. Right. But I have to go over to that computer via the network. Right. 32 gigabytes is a lot to move.
Interesting problem. Mickey and then Bill.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any what do you call this raw formats that are that you can do this with because like even like Red Raw, ARRI Raw, and Hello Fireworks, boom boom boom. I and with MPEG Streamclip, like how is it dealing with the raw metadata? Is it like, say, if one shot is shot in 3200 Kelvin and another one is in 6500, how does that deal with that if it's putting those two clips together or multiple clips together? So I'm curious.
It doesn't deal with it at all. It just brings it just connects the files together. And by the way, this is one scene, one shot that's greater than 34 gigabytes.
Right. Bill and then TJ.
Well, the other developer, Atomos, is the co-license holder. So I wonder if Atomos has any tools on their Ninja and Shogun software license that might do some kind of thing like that.
Interesting problem.
Because they're the other IP owner along with Apple.
Yes.
TJ.
I'm just curious why you need that to be one continuous file. Why? What's the need for having to be all one big file?
It isn't an absolute necessity. I certainly know how to drag them into Final Cut Pro and make them a compound file, or deal with it from that level. But then I have all of these files in my. It's just a cleanliness thing. I just want one stinking file per scene. And, I could do it before on my old Mac, but my new shiny Mac Pro with Big Sur.
May I recommend a folder? You could put all the shots in one folder.
Oh, I have them. And all of that. Yes, I've done all of those things, guys. I just would really like to bring them into one file. Enough,
Yeah, we'll think more on that. Next question.
Steve Bauer of Seattle is up next with where can I see Chris Fenwick's talk with OWC regarding Thunderbolt 4?
I don't know. It's on YouTube. I'll put it. I put the link in Mukana a while ago. I'll put it in one more time.
Perfect. Thanks. Next question.
Sky from the panel here in Seattle. My DirecTV is end of contract. What one box will now do all my streaming? Apple TV, Roku, and it's a box and a UI your grandmother. Oh, he wants a box and UI that your grandmother could use. Something simple.
TJ.
Apple TV.
Apple TV. Paul.
TiVo.
Okay, there you go. But I just. I wouldn't inflict anything other than Apple TV on anybody that's, that is non-techie. It just works, and you just get everything just kind of turns on. I mean, again, for us, I have, I think all of them connected to my receiver, and so I bounce around. But I will say that at this point, 95% of what I do is on Apple TV. but I definitely have Roku and Chromecast and Amazon, other things like that. And so it's not in my web pages and stuff like that. So I bounce around, but I would never give my parents anything else. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, if you're not in the Apple universe, Roku has the most number of apps for it, but the Chromecast, I just got the new Chromecast that has the built-in Google Play interface to it, so it now has a actual user interface, and it comes with HBO Max if you have HBO paid for. So it's pretty good.
Yep. Go ahead, TJ.
My wife used to like the Amazon app with her Fire. She had a Fire Stick, and there was a problem with that. And so I hooked up my old Apple TV for her, and she loves that way more. She hasn't touched the Fire Stick since.
And I have to admit,
some of the remote controls. I've got like 7 remote controls now.
Well, I have to admit that what's nice about it is if I can't find the remote control for my Apple TV, I can use my watch, I can use my phone, I can use there's all these different things. Like I just open up the remote app on my watch and I'm like, okay, I want to go to the next thing. So which has helped me a lot because we lose the controller a lot. The one thing that is missing is they should have the little Find My controller would be amazing. Like that it goes off. Go ahead, Paul.
Still have my TiVo from the year 2000.
Yeah.
I got grandfathered in. I got a lifetime subscription, and
there you go.
Right after that, they changed the lifetime subscription to the life of the box, not
right.
your life, but it's for my life. So now I use Linux to go in and program it to keep it running, and I have to
that's great.
format drives. So definitely not for your parents or grandparents.
Go ahead, TJ.
I do also have an old TiVo that's still chugging along. I will say I detest the Apple TV remote with a fiery passion.
It's painful, but I will say that it just again and I've essentially been a cord cutter since 19. I couldn't get cable, and I didn't try to get TV when I moved to Nicasio, California, to work at Lucasfilm. So I lost my TV in 1996. And haven't really ever gone back. I mean, we've had Hulu here and there, whatever, but I've been a cord cutter probably longer than most people and don't miss it. And like, I find I can't watch ads anymore. Like I just can't, I can't sit through them. Like, I'm just like, I can't do this. And so I think that's going to be a challenge again for the entertainment industry. Courtney and then Leland.
Yeah. And just wanted to mention that both the Fire TV 4K and the Chromecast, the new Chromecast, both of them have voice search built into them that work with the Google Home and with the A-Lady. And they also have search buttons, voice search buttons on the remote, so you can just ask for, show me all the George Clooney movies, and they come up.
That was exactly what I was going to cover with the Roku. We just bought the latest Roku 4K. It does script into Amazon Alexa and has the latest one. The basic Premiere only comes with a standard remote, but you can take an older Roku voice remote and reprogram the new devices with that remote. So keep that in mind.
Good, Sky.
I will say that one reason for living is when my mother-in-law steps up to me and says, "You mean this remote control?"
Yeah. Next question.
I just want to get to the day where you issue the command, turn the TV on, and 4 different services in your living room fight to get to see which one gets to execute the command.
Exactly.
So it's a weird world out there. Mark Harder says, what do y'all think of traveling? Oh, this is an interesting question. Somebody's dealing with production in the COVID era here. What do y'all think of traveling for a week of corporate broadcast work to a place with a local COVID lockdown? Is broadcast production work essential? Work is work is work. He's a true freelancer. Or would you shoot your income in the foot and stay home? He's really needing the work and he wants to try to deal with COVID production sensibly.
I just dealt with this yesterday. So we're going to move a pretty large project out because we have a shoot in Southern California and there's 0 beds and there's 0, and we could almost do it, it's almost all LA talent, so it'd be me and one other person that would have to come in. But I think that the conversation that we're having, and we still may do some of it, maybe cut down, but to do the full production, it's just too many people in one place right at the moment, especially now, so I think that A lot of it, you also have to think about liability for the corporate. So you just want to ask the question for a corporate client, have you talked to legal about this? Because if you start breaking those rules, you get into a situation where if something goes wrong, it puts you in a pretty dicey place. So you want to think about the legal ramifications of whoever's asking for it and paying for it. If something goes horribly wrong, what does that mean if you weren't following the letter of it? And all of our productions are now, we have a COVID officer, we have a cleaning person that literally walks around behind us and cleans everything we touch, everything's managed, and there's masks and face masks and things. And so it's not like we're just doing production, and we spend a lot of money on the extra layer of COVID protection. But even then, right now, I don't think that, we are considered essential workers in the sense that in the legal list, but you just have to think about the legal ramifications of that process. So we may end up with either a cut down production or no production because of it. Mickey and then Bill.
Yeah, I would talk to the broadcast or film communities in your area and also in the area that you're going to, and see what everyone has agreed upon in terms of what the protocols are. And don't be afraid to speak up. Like, if you see something's wrong, something's up, then don't hesitate to bring it up or walk away. Because a production is not worth risking your health.
Beyond your life, you just whether you're risking your life or not. Some people say, well, I'll be okay or whatever. Just know that if you get sick, it means that everyone around you can't work either. It's not like that. The Tom Cruise thing that blew up was not about Tom Cruise being upset about getting sick. He was upset about if the production gets stopped, it costs millions of dollars to stop. And so one of the reasons that I got pretty hectic with about my kids going back to school was I was working on a project that if it would cost in the fall, I was working on a project that if I couldn't show up, it could potentially cost the company $250,000 a week, for me not to be there, and so, or if our group got sick, not just me, but so you just have to think about that. Once people get sick, things get really once they test positive, it doesn't matter whether their life's in danger or not. It just means that everyone around them is now affected. Bill and then George.
First of all, I think everybody in this panel feels your anxiety and your concern about this. It is a big deal right now, and we're all facing this and trying to deal with it as best we can. I think it's really important as you gather clients and you lose clients over the course of your career, you are going to be making judgments about your clients. And this is one where I would judge the client and say, have they proven to me to be empathetic? Have they proven to be sophisticated enough to take these things into consideration? A standard, a large client who has things like Alex was just expressing that takes these things very seriously, I would feel a little more, in fact, a good bit more comfortable than a marginal producer who I think, they're just trying to get the money in and they're willing to cut corners. This to me is not a time to cut corners. We're too close to the end of this, and it is a bad time to make a mistake.
We're not close. We're not anywhere close to the end of this. I just want to make sure I want to manage everybody's expectation. We do have to figure out how to make this work. This is going to be this whole year.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you, but at least we've got vaccines that are going to eventually stop it, so it won't be persistent forever.
Maybe.
I believe that part of it. But anyway, the whole point is make your decision based on safety and what you can afford to do. And just, I feel for you. And I think we all do, because it's a hard call right now.
But you should not be optimistic. Like you don't, like hope is not a strategy. When you think about your business model, really think about what you're going to do. And we do have to figure it out. Right now, we're in a spike. Like the next month is going to be really hard, and we have to be very careful. So that's why I'm talking about it specifically. But you do have to figure out how you manage it in a long term, because some of the folks that I've talked to say this could last for years. And so not like a couple months. They, B117. It's no one tested against B117, so no one knows what that means. That's the new strain that's in Colorado and California. So like they didn't do testing against that. They have no idea whether the vaccine works anymore. Like it may be totally invalidated, all that work. So now they'll say that, it's not, what you'll hear them very carefully say is, we don't have any proof. Yet. So it's important for us as producers to think about how we manage it there'll be these spikes that we have to be super careful around. And when there's a shutdown, I think we have to pay attention to it. But I think that as producers, we have to keep on thinking about how we keep on pivoting towards online, and how we don't have our entire industry based on being on site, because we don't know. Like it may clear up. It will not clear up before April, because we don't even have any vaccines in. And I'm only talking about this because it affects people. Are like, I just hear people constantly saying, we'll be back into business. We'll be doing productions in May. And I am like, you are crazy. Like, to build your business around the idea that it is going to end. And so the thing is that, and the schools my kids go to, they all want to go back in January. I'm like, this is nuts, and so, but I think that as producers, as we think about our business, we have to be thinking about, how do we do this for the next, look, if it comes back, we'll go back to what we were doing, but we should be building a business around how, if this lasts for another 2 years, how do we make that work? Like, how do we, like, if it went another 2 years, how would I have my business working? Because it could, and again, you want to base your business on what, if everything goes wrong, this is how I succeed. Not if everything goes right, this is how I succeed. And so we're not near I can barely see a little dot that is the end of the tunnel right now. Courtney?
Yeah, and if you're going into, there are some portions of broadcast production that are considered essential. It's news broadcasting, and some work that we were doing for the hospitals, which is informational concerning the virus. Mm-hmm. Those are sometimes exempt, but I've even had those canceled because we'd be shooting at hospitals, and the hospitals are just so crowded that they said, we're going to wait even on that. The other thing is that the unions, and it changes every day, they have special contracts and waivers with the state. In Los Angeles right now, we're at a very high peak, and all the studios are closed at the moment for the holidays. And I just got an email from the union president saying that we'll check on January 6th whether we'll allow production to start up again. Everything's closed down at the moment because depending upon ICU availability and so on, and the deal they make with the governor and with the state and with the health departments, all that is negotiated. There's 60, 70 page safety return to work contracts that have to be signed off on. So there's a lot of thought and a lot of stuff that goes into making that decision. So check, and if you're shooting a corporate thing, make sure that if they're covered by union contract, you got to check with them to see if it's even allowed, at the current moment.
Go ahead, Leo, and then George.
So giving a European perspective on that, or a UK perspective, we're already booking stuff out in a virtual environment towards the end of next year to end of 2021, because it's very difficult. I've got nobody wants to go and do the work where you're actually physical on site, and you're putting pressure on my other side of my business, which is in sport. Yes, I'm probably going to be at the Olympics, but we think the requirements of people traveling to the Olympics is going to be really reduced, and they're going to cut the number down of who can go.
Yeah, and I think that there's two things that are happening. Is number one is I do think most corporate that I'm talking to is planning to do virtual the whole year. Like they've kind of given up on the idea that we're going to do physical productions or any kind of scaled productions this year. By the end of this year, with the technology as it's moving forward, a lot of those businesses that we were thinking that we're going to go back to won't exist. It's just not, I think that, we'll probably lose live events. Live events will probably drop by half, in the following year, and probably by 2/3 by 2023. And so the thing is that, it's not just that it doesn't make sense because of COVID. It's not going to make sense anymore, to do a lot of these things. Now we'll go back to doing some production, but that production, if you're in live events, you really should be building up a capacity to do other things. Because the horse is out of the gate, of how this is gonna look. Go ahead, George, and then Peter.
So one of the jobs I'm doing in February, the crew is 8, but everyone is separated. The A1 is in a booth by itself.
Yep.
This A2 is down in a cul-de-sac. I've pretty much told the A2, look, I'm gonna give you your own mask, your own box of gloves. I'm giving you a shield also. I want you to walk out on stage with a shield on and 2 masks. You could take it off when you're done, but I want you to protect yourself. The good news is at least 6 of the people on my crew are just as paranoid as I am about getting sick. So we're going to be good in that sense that everyone is going to be careful. It's a science client, so we're probably going to get COVID tested every other day or so, but they're also careful. But so all of the boxes have been checked as far as those concerns. I would say if you're going to go out there right now, and I'm pretty brutal with folks on crews that I'm working with, if your nose is that mask is below your nose and you talking to me, don't talk to me. Pull that mask up, please. You know, if you have a problem with doing that, I'm gonna call the head of the crew and let them know. But don't jeopardize yourself. If there's a person that don't want to keep that nose in that mask, you know, it's an issue for everyone around you.
And again, beyond whether you think it's dangerous or not, whether you think COVID's a problem or not, just remember that the positive test will affect everyone around you. It's just a business thing. It doesn't matter whether you think it's dangerous or not. It just a positive test is going to put everybody into a bind. Peter?
Well, I was just going to say, I know that the organization I work for does a lot of conferences, and right now they're saying everything's virtual out through August of next year. And I know for a fact they'll reevaluate again in June to see if the rest of the year will become virtual.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Guy Cochran from the panel in Seattle. Can Facebook Live Producer graphics be used on other platforms?
I don't think so. Oh, you can. It can. Guy, go ahead.
Here we go. So this is the free graphics package. Here's an example of a lower third being fired off. Here's an example of another lower third coming over the top.
So what app is this? This is a Facebook app.
Yeah, it's the original Live Producer.
Yeah, so this is Live Producer in the back end. Let me show you where it is. So if you're in, a live in Facebook, it's the graphics tab right here. And then here's the graphics, like I just made this lower third, and so I could unpublish that one or publish it. So let's see, unpublish, unpublish, unpublish. And what you would see if I published, let's say this one, should pop.
But where is that coming out? Is that just coming out another web page?
Yeah, so it's a web page. So down here, you see where it says, let me move up just a little bit.
And does it do
more.
key fill or does it just do Luma?
I think it's doing an alpha because it's a browser. So it says copy and paste this URL into your, can you guys see that at the bottom? Or it might not.
Down to select color scheme Blue Monday.
Oh, I can't get to the bottom. Shoot.
Okay, so it's, but it becomes, you can control it and then it runs as a separate browser window. The graphics themselves come out as a separate browser window. I don't know how a browser would do alpha channel, but and then how are you inserting it over top of your video? Oh,
so you could do this in OBS as well. It's just a browser. So you could see it right here. So and then when I fire it off, well, actually there's not one active. Go back to that graphic. So graphics preview. But this is cool because this used to cost $5,000 and now it's free. Come on, graphics. My window's too small. I can't get to it right now.
Right.
So, but try zooming back out. Yeah, you're zoomed in. If you zoom back out, you should be able to see it.
Yeah, let me zoom out. This might take a second.
Yeah, this is basically the team I worked with for nearly a year over at Vidpresso developed Live Producer, and they continue to upgrade and expand on its capabilities, this being one of the latest features that was added recently. I haven't tried to use it the way Guy's using it right now, which is kind of a one-off, but seems to do what it needs to do. It's interesting.
Yeah. So anyways, do you see it now? Down here in the bottom where it says publish?
Yep.
Yeah. So when you hit these, you could see that it comes across. And again, somebody could be remote. This is a way to have somebody doing remote. And this isn't working on mobile yet, but imagine a high school football team being able to have a student doing the scoring remotely. So on that one, I could say, edit that score. They just scored a touchdown, and they can be across the country putting that in there. And now it updates. And then when you want to unpublish, it just goes away nice.
And so you're in vMix though, is that actually doing it as an alpha channel or is it doing it as a Luma key?
It is.
It's got transparency.
Yeah, it's got transparency. It must be an alpha channel in there somewhere.
Well, no,
So
you can get away. You can do Luma, but I guess I'm not clear to the interaction. It's just a
He's using a browser input. It's a browser input. So it's an emulated browser inside vMix. OBS will do the same thing.
Yep.
So you could bring in a web interface.
That's cool. Very cool.
Here's that URL, just paste it into, you can see what happens if you click. That's just the regular chat. I just stuck it in the panelist view. But if you click on that, it should just show the graphic and you can see exactly what it is.
That's great. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we should play with it more.
What are the color palettes? How many options are they giving you? And can you modify those to your brand colors?
It's got avocado.
You used to be able to. Avocado. Everybody
What
knows
else do you
avocado.
need?
Very
Why are we-
food-oriented
why are we still
avocado
scrolling?
cheesecake.
Pink.
It doesn't
I'm
have
done.
harvest gold. You know.
So there's no custom way to do that right now.
There used to be, when I was a beta tester for this before Facebook bought it, it was customizable. It looks like that they've stripped it down. So
there's
I
pink.
never saw you over there, Guy. Who are you working with over there? Did you know Dan and those guys?
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I worked with Hassan and Raymond, or Randy and a couple others. So
that's cool.
Surprised we didn't meet.
Charles?
Guy, can you control the type of animation? Because it's coming like the intro animation and then it's holding on a static frame. Is that what it's doing? And then when you trigger it to go the outro, it plays the outro animation?
Yep, exactly. For that theme, I think that there's different themes that have different effects.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, you should play with it more. So you can use it in something other than Facebook. So anyway,
Guy, can you run another one? I'm actually looking at the web page, but I just see white right now.
Oh, let me fire off another one. So publish vMix user. So here should a lower third should just scoot it across.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Interesting.
Really? Well, maybe there's some other programming behind the scenes.
I mean, I'm just literally looking at it in Safari, so maybe that's what
Yeah, the first time I did this was last night. I did it in OBS up in the cloud, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool! I could have other people doing this, and I could have remote feeds coming in, and the world's
I
changing
wonder if
so
we have
fast."
to be logged in as Guy, because I'm not seeing it either.
I got it in
you're not?
Safari.
Oh, you got it, Roscoe?
I
You
got
got
it.
it in Safari?
Yeah, in
I got it
Safari.
in Firefox.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
Interesting.
We'll keep on playing with that. Next question.
Kenny Hampton is in with appreciated your comments on bidding projects. How do you handle the logistics of accounts payable and receivable? Seems the financial can get in the way of the creative to complete the project. How do you split your time to do all of these things?
I do everything I can to avoid being in both conversations at the same time as often as possible. So, I don't like being the person that has to talk about the money with the client. It's just a general process internally that I want to be able to talk to the client about what they want. Then I want to define what we're going to need to do it. And then I have somebody else do the spreadsheet and interact with the client on it. They can't always do that if you're a smaller, with a smaller thing, but it kind of separates those roles. And it means that, I get to stay in those conversations that are creative, but it's hard to do as a one person thing. Go ahead, George.
So Alex just made a good point. So obviously I'm a one-man company. A close friend of mine I've worked with for years, he's the producer on this project. So hire yourself someone you trust to handle the heavy lifting on your job as producer. So you can handle the other small stuff, logistics. I'm the EIC, so I'll just handle that part of it and he'll handle everything else as far as crew and the client.
Yep. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm literally a one-man band for some of the stuff like that opera job I just did. So there is no other person, and I didn't have a budget to hire anybody. Luckily, I was talking to a different person in the company, at the opera company, about the money. So I could email. And I think I speak about everything in like a third-person way or a we kind of a way where, it's just how it is. And I'm following the rules that everybody else has to follow, even though I'm technically making my own rules. I speak about it in a way as if it were somebody else's rule, and it's not lying, and but I'm just speaking of it as if this is just how it is, and this is how it goes. And that can help alleviate a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One thing I try to live by for myself is don't talk money with the technical team and don't talk tech with the money team. Keep those things completely separate.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No,
Hey, Alex, can I just say real quick?
Yeah.
maybe next year we could plan on doing a couple of, like, I had to do MSCs for this job. There's some things that I do a lot of projects, but when you start dealing with the bigger clients, you get into the legal and paperwork, and it's mind-boggling. The MSC alone almost drove me crazy, and I would love to talk about those things in the new year, about all the legal stuff. So we kind of.
I mean, MSAs are really hard to deal with, but they are key to the operation.
MSA.
Yeah, but MSAs are, because once you go through the trouble of being an MSA, and then it's a lot easier to hire you than everybody else, with a company. So if you're in a big corporation, what you want to get to is that MSA as fast as you can, because then all the friction goes away for working with you as opposed to somebody else. So so you'll see. I'm not very aggressive about it. I usually wait for them to ask. I'm not like some people will get into this thing like they want an MSA from day one, and I'm kind of like, oh, we'll get to it. But I tend to be that way about all of it. I'm not a very hard sell kind of person. In fact, I don't sell at all. I just do my thing, and people show up or they don't. Roscoe.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I find breakdown sheets to be wonderful. That you actually, you take working from a script, that you actually have to look at everything that's written, and you have to say exactly how much and break it into those pieces, and then get back to a budget item. I don't know if that's. I'm not in the corporate world, so I'm not sure if that works the same way.
I build decks. I'm right in the middle of 3 decks right now. I just build these decks that explain everything about how we're going to do it and what we're going to do. And then behind it, I do figure out how much all that's going to cost and how many people. And, and there's sometimes it's per unit, and sometimes it's, you have, as the client, you start building different pipelines based on the way that they work. So I don't have it the way I do it. I have it the way that client does it. I look at how they, there's some clients that are very cut and dry about what they're going to do. And so I can say, it's going to take this many hours for someone to do something, but there's other ones where they're very creative and they're responsive to what they're looking at, and things can change for a long time. So I do kind of what I would consider zone defense, which is that I'm just going to hire people for a very long period of time, and just let them know that it's just going to it's going to ebb and flow, because that's the way rather than it being specific, because we have to just respond to what they're doing. It just depends on, how they, but I'm probably not a good example in the sense that I build almost all my shows bespoke. Like I design it for the client and for that job. And if a client hires me 5 times, they'll get 5 slightly different versions of that, or sometimes very radically different versions based on what I learn about how to do that project, how they do that project, what was successful. I'm not very good at doing the same thing all the time. Go ahead, TJ, and then Courtney. And then
MSA in this context, what does that represent?
Master Service Agreement. So it's just a general set of agreements that you have with the client of how they'll get paid and what the repercussions are, and auditing and process, and but Master Service Agreement. Go ahead, Courtney.
And the bigger the company, the more complex their account payable systems are. If you're dealing with like Viacom or Disney, you're going to get paid 90 days later. You got to take that into account. And they'll want you to set up a vendor account, and a lot of times they offshore. Most of the big studios and stuff have offshored all of their accounts payable, so you got to go deal with all of that paperwork, and it takes reams of paperwork and months of filling.
And you will think, when you get into corporate, you will think that you can just have it be some other way than the way that they do it. You cannot. You cannot do that. And the thing is that, like calling them 31 days after you sent a net 30 when they told you it was going to be net 60 or net 90 is a great way to not get any more work. You just have to be patient, and you figure it out. And you figure out how to make that work. But if you don't figure it out, you won't have them for very long. Now, if you get really to a point where you're the only one that they can go to, you can get a little more particular, but you just need to know that you have to kind of plan for the speed at which they work. And government is even slower. Roscoe and Bill.
Sorry, it came back to me. For narrative film, Movie Magic budgeting, Movie Magic scheduling has all the breakdowns, and it is the system that the industry uses. Right. So if you just want to learn a system, that's a good one to go to.
Yep.
I'll put on a link.
And it depends on what you're working. I have found there are a couple of little things you can do. Sometimes if you put 2%, 10 net 30 or something like that on an invoice, there are some people who have in their contract that they must take advantage of that. So you can get checks out faster than that. And I've also, even in working with government things, if you're up to a certain level, sometimes people who have enough juice in the bottom have access to a corporate card, and they'll pay you immediately for things. It's just, it's not one thing. It is every corporation has its own culture and processes for doing these things, and you need to explore, because sometimes you don't need to wait 90 days. Sometimes you do. No
Go ahead, Chris.
question about it.
I've also run into companies in the past that had a policy, and I only found this out because one of the people on my crew had a brother who was head of finance at this big company. And he said, 2 rules. Number 1, never give me an invoice for more than $10,000 because it goes through a whole different level of approval. Number 2, if your invoice says net 30, call on the 31st day. He actually said you have to call on the 31st day because he was instructed to leave invoices in a bin until he got the phone call, and then he would pay them. That was like their rule. Like, no, don't ever pay anybody until they ask for it.
That's an interesting one. I haven't worked with a company like that.
Here's the thing. You may not know that. You may not know that you've worked for a company like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we usually wait a little bit longer. I mean, my whole thing is trying to make all the friction as low as possible, related to that. So we can just keep on talking about the creative, and the other stuff will sort itself out. And that, I find that tends to be that's how they keep on coming back, is to A, do good work, and B, make it as frictionless as possible. Next question.
Victor Cahallo from our panel in Brookings, South Dakota. Anyone have any behind the scenes information regarding the KISS live streaming event, KISS 2020 Goodbye from Dubai?
I did not see it. Go ahead, TJ.
The only thing that I know, it looks like they're using Vimeo as the back end, just based on what the player looks like. I have it running live right now.
Is it going on right now?
Yes, the live stream has started. The actual show, I believe, starts like in another hour or something. But they got, they're warming the stream like they should.
Yeah, that's good. Next question.
Marty Adius of Silver Spring, Maryland, and the panel often says, what's the currently acceptable pay cycle? Some have insisted on no less than 180 days.
I wouldn't work with anybody that was 180 days.
Yeah,
120, I've definitely done in government and some large companies but only if I knew ahead of time it was going to be that long. And generally, the thing for companies is the other side of that is you prioritize things. We have some clients that pay in 10 days. If they call, you clear the deck. They've taken a different tact, which is that, so if you do 100, if I have 180 days or 10 days, I'll always dump, unless the 180 days is really, really high paid, I'll dump the 180 day job or I'll put it onto a much less skilled staff, because I don't, it's not real money. Go ahead, Courtney.
And you need to maintain a cash flow account, enough money in your accounts to handle employees. If you're paying employees, you have to pay. There's certain labor rules. You have to pay within 2 weeks. So if you're at 180 days, you got to carry that debt for 2 weeks. So you got to make sure you have enough.
If it's a big contract, it can make sense, but you have to calculate into it. I haven't done it, but in the past, we did take into account slow payment. And so I think that some of them thought that they were making interest on it, and we were actually adjusting the rate up because it was going to be 90 days or 120 days. We were calculating interest against it. So when we put the thing in, everything was, I don't know, X percentage higher, because we knew we weren't going to get paid for that long. And we had our own interest that we had to pay, to hold on to that cash. Cause to Courtney's point, we had a line of credit. We're putting money out on that. We're paying interest on that. We need to, so that was part of our actual cost calculations, and that gets back to Bill being able to say, hey, we'll give you a discount if you give it to us faster, because there's, and I will say that there are those kinds of things we can talk about. There's probably good second hours in here about the business end of this thing that we probably should cover more often. But when you get into it, like for instance, being able to have tons of liability insurance and E&O insurance and everything else opens doors to larger projects. Being able to withstand being paid 60 days but still have your employees opens you to larger projects. Being able to take on $400,000 of debt or $400,000 of cost before you see the first check opens up $1 million, $2 million projects. There's, so having, that's, where you get to do bigger projects is because you have the capacity to handle what that company needs you to do. And there are companies out there that can do it, that are oftentimes charging more than you are, because there's not that much competition, so lines of credit give you they can get you into a lot of trouble. They got me into a lot of trouble, but lines of credit can be, super powerful in the sense if you manage them well, because it means that you can withstand that process. The key is like thinking about lines of credit early and persuading some bank to give you $2,000 or $1,000 of line of credit, even if it seems like it's useless, and then rolling it up without having to put in collateral. So these are all things that we can, and you roll it up to $1 million of a line of credit with, over 2 decades, and then that's the kind of thing that I didn't do that you probably should. So anyway, so you want to, those are the kind of things, but thinking about those things ongoingly, these are the kind of nuts and bolts of how to build something that's doing bigger stuff. Go ahead, Chris.
I would say one bit of advice that I've given people over the years several times is don't make the dollar value or the byline or the credit the goal. Let that stuff happen. I think a lot of times people grow businesses too big and too fierce, and maybe there's a period of time where it looked like this had to be that way, but maybe the better choice would have been to say, no, we're not going to do that job, and let things grow more organically. I mean, in the years that I've been in business, I've seen so many businesses come and go. And I remember there was a point in the 90s where a guy who was working for me left to go work for another company. And I looked at it and I said, those guys are either going to be gigantic or they're going to be gone in 5 years. And they were gone in 5 years.
Yeah. It's complicated. It depends. Like once you get a client, like if you get some big clients, saying no to them is hard, because they'll just, that they need to know that you're kind of part of the team, like that they know that, for them to rely on you. And so I with certain clients, I'll have a handful of primary clients that we will grow as fast as they need us to grow to do the job, but then I don't take on new clients, and then you do want to try to diversify that over time, but you also want to make sure that the clients that you're now part of the team, that you're really part of the team. So anyway, we didn't get too much of the conversation about artists, but we have one question from TJ Asher. TJ, did you want to ask your question there?
Sure. Yep. So I was wondering who is your dream artist that we can get, if we reach a critical mass here for the office hours, who's the one person we can pull in, and what is that critical mass that we need to get them?
Peter Gabriel.
I knew it.
For me,
that was my money.
I've done interviews with Peter Gabriel before, and I can just tell you, so much fun. Like, what a thinker, and he's got this great studio that's got these keyboards and things on the walls and things, and he can just sit there and play and everything else. And so, like, to me, I think that would be like, we're all grown up when we get to that. I think we need about, so have you ever seen the thing where the guy gets a paperclip and he turns it, he ended up buying a house by trading?
Yeah.
I'll trade this paperclip for that. So a lot of what we're doing right now is we have to look at where the math that we're doing as we go to the artists is thinking about who do we add value to right now at our certain size, at the size that we're at, who is it useful for us to, bring in. And so the artists that we're talking to right now are, the two places that we've looked really are artists that are from the pre-internet bubble, so that they don't have a huge following and they don't have new songs that bring them a big following. So how can we help them with that? By giving them a new set of possible fans. So you look at and allow them to work on that. So again, people like Peter Hillman or Brian Vander Ark, or those are folks that they're from the 90s. They still do a lot of great work. They're incredible artists. And we could add something by exposing them. And then behind the scenes, if they've shown up on office hours, they know that they can email me anytime they want. They'll get a response in a couple hours. And I'm happy to talk to them about gear and things and everything else. And so But I think that they've also, our job when they come is to make sure they have a great time, and Elmo is another example of that we just had on, where he's just got a great story and he's got great, fun songs. And so then you have the new folks that understand this model that I think that we can bring on, are the Daria Musks, and there's a whole bunch of Patreon folks that we've worked with. We were doing a bunch of work for Patreon. And so a bunch of artists from that group that I think would be a lot of fun to bring on and discuss stuff with, and they get it, but most of them haven't, broken into like the Billboard 100 or whatever. As we start to build that model and as we start to figure it out, and part of it was getting better audio. So I kind of backed away for a little while because I felt like the audio quality wasn't very high, and then we couldn't get the 1080p. And I'd look at example versions of this and I'd be like, I don't know if they're really going to want to come. So I kind of slowed down the artist thing, but now we have 1080p, still working on the band, making sure that they have good bandwidth. We've got better audio. So those are things that I think that now it's important that we show up for these artists, that we have a great conversation with them. And so far the panel and the attendees have done an amazing job of just making a really interactive conversation. Where most artists that have come on so far have considered this to be one of the best interviews they've ever had. And we just have to keep on doing that. And then you start building up a group, and you start getting artists that are, that respect those artists, and artists that respect those artists. And before you know it, you can kind of build up into something that, and we have to, keep on building our capacity to do those. But I think that over the year we could get to it. And I think that the other side, of course, is the size of the group. You just want to think about the playing a venue at a couple hundred. There's a certain number of people we can get. At a couple thousand, there's a different group of people that would be interested, that's valuable to. At tens of thousands, that's more valuable. So so it just depends on how big the group is, on the quality of what we're doing, that type of thing. So I think that that's how we slowly get our way to any artist that we'd want to come on is possible. It's just a matter of how big we are and how good we are and what the distribution is. And I'm not in any rush. I'm just saying that's the math behind the process. Any questions about that? Anyway, but I think that, does anyone else have any other artists they would love to see come on here if they weren't constrained by whether they would come on or not? Who would you want to see, I guess, is the question. Go ahead, Bill.
I dove into a deep dive the other day. Chris Isaac, the kind of crossover country / pop artist, has a new presentation of Wicked Game, his original song that they did. It's a stellar audio performance of it. Mm-hmm. And I started seeing it pop up on the reaction video sites, which are really popular now. And a ton of people I find that to be a fascinating phenomenon, the reaction, watching somebody watch a piece of content. That to me was really surprising, because he's not really A-list. He's always had a sustainable career, but right. The technical quality of that new live performance that's on YouTube was amazing.
Yeah, it's great. Sky and then Leo.
I don't know why, but the two names that popped to mind are Billy Joel. I guess maybe because he's a hero of mine. But the other one technically would be interesting. The other two would be Weird Al Yankovic, who would parody something, and he'd take something and then twist it. And so it gives a whole new perspective and embracing something different. And then what's the group that does the sequences of funny things? They'll do something with a car.
Okay, Go.
That's it. Yeah, they would be very interesting to talk to.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Go ahead, Leo.
Someone I'd like to see, or Leo, I'm sorry, there's a Leo and a Leland. Sorry.
Oh, yeah,
Whenever I hear Leo, I answered that. So sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
I'd like to see Cat Stevens and to talk about Tea for the Tillerman, the thing that he re-released it this year, and the two versions, you play them side by side and you see the difference is just amazing. Absolutely amazing what he did with that.
Leland?
For me, there's an artist out there on YouTube known as Neon Vines. She is an amazing audio creator, and I'd really love to see what she's up to. She runs all kinds of Akai sound equipment and goes places I've never seen anyone in music go before. She's got a beautiful voice, and I think it'd be interesting to hear what she does with voice plugins and things like that. She does.
Yeah. Paul?
Yeah, I'd like to see Paul McCartney, but all kidding aside, how about Gary, maybe one of our English or UK people, But how about Gary Clark Jr.? I've got a pretty good connection to him. Can I ask him to come on here?
Well, you're gonna please excuse me. I'm not sure I know who Gary Clark Jr. is.
You haven't heard of Gary Clark Jr.? Oh man,
I know it's embarrassing.
The greatest
but
blues musician of our time.
I'm not my wife will be upset that I don't know blues. I know I've turned. I was hesitant to say anything about it. It's not.
Can I ask him to come on the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'll ask.
We're gonna just make sure to push it out a little bit with artists. We do want to spend a lot more time with them. So an artist should be booked at least 3 weeks out, because we want to be able to call them and talk to them, and possibly, like, as we go into this next year, I really don't want to bring music artists on that don't have the hardware. If I have to figure out where to get the hardware, I'll figure it out, but I don't want to have them come on with their own stuff that isn't very good.
He's fairly well known, I think you'll find.
Yeah,
Okay.
he'd be pretty much an ace. He's got a big following.
If you know him well enough, and everything. I'm not trying to bring more people in. I'm just trying to have us get the experience of that. But if he, if it's just outside of my genre. Like I was going to say, to give you a sense, the other person that I was thinking about would be Andy Partridge from XTC. Would be really fun to put on the show. So like I just come from a different, I did different background. Go ahead, Peter, and then Charles.
Well, I have a slightly different view of it. It'd be interesting to get somebody like Anthony Mason on to talk about how he talks to the musicians.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever,
and so one of the things I do want to say is that I don't think every week will be a new musician. I did find that to be very hard to sustain. I think we're looking at once a month, every other week, and then how do we bring other artists on? They could be visual artists, they could be different kinds of artists, and also how do we talk about the technology that the artists need themselves? So if they come on Thursday, we talked a little bit about how to set up your home rig and how to do other things like that. We'll talk more about those things, so that talent is interested in Thursdays in general. That of how to do those things and how we can support talent to do those things. Go ahead, Charles.
Stevie Wonder.
Oh yeah,
I'm just saying.
I do know it. Yeah. No, we want to, like, I'm thinking Paul McCartney, Peter Gabriel, Stevie Wonder. We'll just do them all one week after another.
Yeah, moonshots.
Yeah, exactly.
Think moonshots.
Well, if you're going for moonshots, definitely put Jacob Collier on the list.
Lady Gaga.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Courtney. Should be great.
I'd like to see Roger McGuinn, because he's kind of a techie, and he's been through a lot business-wise, and he's done film scores and everything else. So in the industry, he might be an interesting.
Roger McGuinn's not as hard for us.
Right. I'd say he'd be closer to attainable, but
Well, but I mean, I know people who know him, and I've been on a show with him. I think that he's not, because I think he's worked with Leo a bit. I think he's shown up on some stuff with Leo, so I think that it's not, that one's actually a more, it's within range. You're right that he'd be great. Go ahead, TJ, and then Bill.
I want to second Guy's suggestion for Al Yankovic, because he is a big tech guy as well, not just an amazing musician, but also thinking, somebody like Taylor Swift, who is really embraced the whole community aspect of what it takes to be an artist. It would be interesting to get some perspective on something like that, who is way out there in the scale of musicians and fandom.
Yeah, and I think that one as we're kind of doing, could be anything. Alicia Keys she's so cool. Like, I mean,
Sarah Bareilles.
But I'm just saying that I'll just tell you one Alicia Keys story really quickly. Is that the first time I met Alicia Keys, I had to show her how to use the previous version of Mukana. It was called the Question Engine, and I had to show her how to use it in the iPad. And I walk up in her studio with an iPad, and she just looks at me and she just goes, "Hey, you," like she had known me since I was in high school, And your brain just like stops. Like literally, there was a gap where there was no thought for a little while, and then it turned back on again. Okay, now I got to keep on talking again. And so the whole thing about her though is that her whole vibe is so cool, like, and just so present and so connected to people. It would be really fun to have her on. Go ahead, Bill.
I wonder though, we're talking mostly music, and I think that's the big resonance, because we all have these music artists we love. But I wonder if we ever want to think about going outside of that. I know you mentioned like maybe doing some visual artists, but even somebody like a real high-end type designer has an artistic side to what they do that I think is really veiled from most people. I know most of the people I know when an art director comes in and the layout of something looks 10 times better, it's almost like it's magic. And you wonder, how did they possibly do that? And it's because they're thinking on a level that we just haven't been to about that subject.
Some folks from my background that I do want to approach as we get a little better, I just want to figure out how we do it with them, is Jay Schuster, who was mechanical, did all the pods and spaceships, or did a lot of that design for those for a couple episodes. He's now at Pixar. Doug Chang, I used to work for, and Ian McCaig, and Coley Wirtz, all people that came out of Lucasfilm. I mean, if you ever see Coley Wirtz stuff on LinkedIn, he posts these things he does with his finger on his phone, and I couldn't touch it with all the tools in the world. Leo and TJ.
So I'd like Roman Mars, the podcaster who does 99% Invisible. He has one of the most beautiful voices you ever hear on any podcast, and has just spent a long time sorting that out. And just what he does and how they do that production is unbelievable. They're just the other side of you in Oakland. Yeah.
I mean, another one would be, in that vein, would be Ira Glass. That I still consider This American Life to be the best podcast ever made. Every day, every week. It's just like, you look at the subject matter and you're like, that is going to be boring, but I'm still going to listen to it because I just know better. The title is always like, I don't think I really, and sometimes I have to wait a day or two, but then I always listen to it. TJ,
if we're talking non-musicians, excuse me, how about Jon Favreau? I think people that know him, or Adam Savage.
I think Adam's very doable. In that area.
How about Elton Brown?
Elton Brown, I'm working on him. Working on. I've had some interactions with Elton Brown, but he's pretty stingy about time. So we'll see how that goes. Mickey and then Sky.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone has some sort of connection with Trent Reznor. I'd love to hear about his recent work on Mank, and also Disney's Soul. I'd love to hear, like, how do you go from 9 Inch Nails to Soul? That would be like amazing to talk.
We haven't talked about Soul yet. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to do any spoilers. But if you haven't seen Soul, I watched it again last night. I watched pieces of it, and then I sat down last night.
Yeah, it was interesting.
I can't think of a Pixar film that I enjoyed more than Soul. Like, I really tried to go back and figure out, like, is there one that I've liked better? And I don't think, and I totally didn't think it was going to happen that way. I saw little pieces of it and I was like, I don't know, it's going to be kind of, whatever. But when I think back on it, I just don't know if I can think of, like, I just feel like they just keep improving that craft. And it's so well, it didn't do what Up did, which was, I was crying in 10 minutes. Like, Up is the first 10 minutes of Up is like a master class that I can not have any dialogue and have you in tears, like in 10 minutes. Like, I think they were just trying to prove a point. Like, we can just do this. Like, watch this. Well, hold my beer. Let me show you how quickly I can get an audience to be sniffling without it. Oh, and by the way, I'm not going to use any dialogue. I'm just going to show you a bunch of pictures, and it's not even going to be in your genre. It's going to be like a time that you weren't even around, and we're still going to just drive you into the ground, I think that was like a proof of concept. Go at Sky and then Mickey.
Soul for me was also an homage to Fantasia, because they used the artistic tools to take you into an area that you didn't want. So I just wanted to upvote the Jon Favreau, because he's a hero of mine on many levels, and with the food concepts and things, and then the film and the advanced work. But I also want to see, I would probably do what I just saw you do, Alex. You turned back into your 13-year-old self when you were talking about Alicia Keys. Yeah. It was very fun. And I would probably just kind of melt. Oh, Jon Favreau.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go ahead, Mickey. Were you going to say something?
Trent Reznor's an absolute techie heel, in terms of getting a technical setup. That's nothing. And he recently did an interview on Variety a couple of weeks back, and it was ho-hum. I think we could it could have a more entertaining and informative interview.
I'll work on getting the trend. I would love to. I mean, I broke a rib at the Pretty Hate Machine concert. in Metropole. Like I was in the mosh pit. Like and I had to drive like 4 hours through a snowstorm to get there. And it was before I was in the music industry, so I didn't have any, like I had to buy a ticket, which I didn't have to do pretty much after that. Like I was already working at the radio station, but I didn't have it. I didn't get passes. But so I have followed, and I still think Pretty Hate Machine is one of the best albums ever made. You know, like I think that was some of his best work. He's done a lot of great work, but I just think that there was something about that. And so the incredible range. So I would love to, I mean, obviously I would love to bring Trent Reznor on. Yeah. George?
Stepping back to soul a little bit. I think this is the first time I watched a lot of movies with my kid. This is the first time I sat with him and actually broke down a movie as far as the edits and the storyline and so forth. And it was the first time I looked at a lot of the Facebook comments, and what I got from a lot of our adult colleagues is they said the first time that Pixar has made a movie for the adults. So it's got a lot of messages in there that goes all around.
And I admit my kids are pretty precocious, but they totally got it as well. I mean, they totally enjoyed it at 11 and 13. And I will admit that they're pretty. I think my daughter is actually more emotionally evolved than I am. But I think that that they got it. It wasn't like they lost the kids. Maybe younger kids, but at 10 or 12, I think that it was still there. Go ahead, Chris.
If you're gonna get Peter Gabriel, either the month before or after, you ought to be able to get Sting.
I knew.
And the other one that would be interesting would be David Grohl.
Oh man, he'd be so much fun.
I mean, he's very tech minded. He's very analog, of course, but he loves his tech. You know, the Sound City doc was
one of my favorite music docs. I am obsessed with music docs. You know,
watching the end of that where Trent and that Beatles guy are doing the song together.
Yeah, you're just
it's just insane.
Yeah, it was a moment.
And I love it. Grohl says to McCartney, he goes, "Wow, that was so easy writing a song with you." And McCartney says, "Isn't it always that easy?"
I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly.
If you're gonna get Sting, have Shaggy come in and recreate that Tiny Desk concert that they did together. That was absolute genius. Talk about.
Yeah, I would love to get after doing our show with Dolby. I'd love to get Fantastic Negrito in. Would be fun to have him in there. For those of you who saw him, I think he's pretty cool. Leland?
Get there. I could probably get ColecoVision, who is Kalik Glover. He was the Emmy-winning sound engineer from We Are the World. So if you'd like to have him in, I'll give him a call, see if he wants to show up.
Well, and then when we get into the sound engineer thing, the question really is do we put that on Tuesday? We talk about sound engineering. Do we put it on Thursday and do a talent? So we can figure that out. Paul?
Yeah, I'm going to work on Adam Curry, Gary Clark Jr., Matthew McConaughey, and Joe Rogan. They're all locals now.
I'd probably pass on Adam Curry and Joe Rogan, just so you know, just a little too hot for this group. So like I'm not saying that I haven't listened to them, but that'll be hard to fit inside of our keeping everybody together thing.
Okay. Too hot to handle. I get it.
Too hot to handle for us. Yeah, we're just a middle of the road. Go ahead, TJ.
Well, you do your sound engineer on Tuesday for the artist who's going to be appearing on Thursday.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, but the other ones that sound great. Matthew McConaughey would be a lot of fun. He's also a pretty cool dude. Done a show with him. He handles a lot. He handles a lot live. Things going not so well sometimes. So anyway, he's super. Matthew McConaughey wins for the most intense person I've ever had to prep. Is that we did a thing with Interstellar, and I had to prep the actors, for it on stage and at the Smithsonian. And Matthew McConaughey is just totally feels like he's like sucking your brain out of your eyes. Like he's just so intensely listening to everything that you're saying. And you totally get, it's not just that he's listening, he's incorporating it all as you're saying it, and he'll do it exactly the way you tell him to do it. It's like he's gonna pull, and he did it. And he makes it look like it's an act. Like he makes it look totally easy, like he just thought of it at that moment. But you can
It's
tell
all,
it.
all right.
All right. Well, so just, it doesn't matter. Anyways, it's just he's really it'd be really fun to have him on. Anyway, a great day. We've got a minute. We still got our second hour of. We went a little heavy, but we're on vacation, kind of. I gotta go. Now I have to go to work, but anyway. So thank you guys all for coming here and we're gonna see who shows up on January 1st. Well, it's already January 1st, so we know Mickey will be here because it's not anything new for him.
Mickey's
but
already here.
The last day of the year.
He's already here. But we'll see who crawls out of bed tomorrow morning. I celebrate Eastern New Year's, not West Coast New Year's. So I'll be here bright and early. Anyway, it's great seeing all of you. Go ahead, Ray.
Yes, I just had two quick questions. Courtney, have you ever worked with Don Davis? He was General Hammond in Stargate SG-1 and 100 other character roles.
Doesn't ring a bell. Maybe.
You are a dead ringer for the man, and you speak in the same dulcet tones. He was a good friend of mine. Stargate was produced here. I used to go on the set all the time with him. And I knew I was in high school with his first wife. But at any rate,
I don't think we're genetically related.
he's from Missouri, as I am, by the way.
That's but good. Now you know the name of your doppelganger.
Yeah, exactly. I will go ahead and start. Yep, absolutely. And did you have one other question, or was that it?
We had one more from Paul Wallace. I wasn't sure if you were on a deadline of some kind. It seems like it'll take a little bit, but any thoughts on Audum, AUDM? Audum lets you listen to long-form journalism instead of reading it on iOS. I love podcasts. I love them in my car. I love them when we're working out. It's not quite a podcast, but it's great for educating yourself on what's going on in the world in a way that works with your. And then that was the end of the post.
I like people reading things to me. I can definitely agree with that. I'm not familiar with that one. I mean, Apple has its own audio system. All I listen to, I don't read books anymore. I just listen to them. If they don't make them in audiobooks, then I don't know what they have to say. Paul?
It's great. I discovered it this morning, and it's got the New Yorker, the Atlantic, all the great magazines, and they have great readers like Bill Davis and Courtney who read to you. They're great. It's great.
Do they do foreign affairs in audio?
They might. They do all the big name magazines. I do like Vanity Fair, I think, and
Although as I got older, I realized why foreign affairs. When I was a kid, I've been reading foreign affairs since I was like 8. And when I was a kid, I was like, why are the words so big? Like, there's so many pages. And I thought that they were trying to say, now as I'm older, I totally get why the words are so big for foreign affairs, was because their primary market is my age, not 8 years old, Leo.
It wouldn't surprise me if they did that. They do the big name magazines.
I would love to listen to foreign affairs rather than read it. That's all. It's very dry. It'd be much better to listen to. Leo?
Yeah, I don't know that exact thing, but I know that it's going to potentially be a big year for audio again. We've got Clubhouse. There's also another one called Stereo. This is going to be the new social media platforms that are coming out are all to do with audio. It's very interesting how they're going to grow over the next year. Well, let's see if people realize they actually have to sound good to be on these things.
Well, that's why we've been doing audio checks for so long, and that you will notice that you can listen to the show. If you haven't already, you can listen to the show in Mukana, the mobile version of Mukana, and you have been able to for quite some time. And all we have to do now is make it so that you can shift it and listen to it, which will be coming hopefully as early as next week. Bill?
One of my interesting things is I've spent some time on the last 2 years with Audible, which is the book and or novel thing. They do a lot of nonfiction, but the fiction thing I found really fascinating. Particularly, they're growing an array of voice talents who I think are just stunning. People who can keep 10 characters in a saga narrative distinct and going through one person's performance. That is an amazing skill. I stand in awe of those readers.
Go ahead, TJ.
Not related to this discussion, but reporting on that KISS live stream thing, they're showing a ton of behind the scenes in the warm-up prior
nice.
to this thing. I mean, it's just like, oh, how are we doing the fireworks? How are we doing this, the
That's great.
staging? How are we doing the lighting? Yeah, so there's a ton of interesting stuff going on there.
Let's figure out who did that live stream. We'll get them on. Have them talk about it. It'd be good. I'm going to go ahead and shift over to the post show. We're going to hit the Warp Core right now. If you're not coming over, great to see you. See you tomorrow. And if you are, I'll see you in a